Welcome. As the chair of this meeting, I need to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. School committee members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Elizabeth Albota,
Yes.
Mary Branley,
Yes.
Mara Hogan,
Yes.
Natasha Rivera.
Yes.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Colleen Andrade,
Yes.
Jeff Ronte,
Yes.
Charles Gabron.
He's muted.
Okay. Brian Haas.
Yes.
Hi, Charles. Thank you. Brian
Yes.
and Wayne White.
Yes.
Thank you. This open meeting of the Maynard School Committee is being conducted remotely is allowed by the Act Governor Baker signed into law on July 16th, 2022, extending certain pandemic-related policy measures. This bill authorized the continuation of remote meetings and public access under open meeting law and other remote meeting provisions until March 31st, 2023. This committee is convening by Zoom as posted on the district's website. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. Accordingly, be aware that other folks may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording, which is audible to and viewable by the public. Additionally, please use the raise your hand function to let the chair know if you are planning to record or broadcast this meeting. Most of the supporting materials that have been provided for the members of this body are available on the Maynard Public Schools website in a folder titled 2022-2023 Agendas under the tab Agendas under the tab School Committee. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda and documents unless the chair notes otherwise. Any citizen wishing to make a comment to be read during a virtual meeting and entered into the public record may do so by emailing comments to comments4scmeeting@maynard.k12.ma.us. Comments need to be emailed in advance and will be received up until the public comments agenda item is addressed. Please include public comments in the subject line and your full name and street address in the body of your email. Emails without this information cannot be read. Statements longer than 350 words may be cut short at the 3-minute mark to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to be heard, but will be submitted in their entirety for the public record. The chair will read only one statement from each individual. However, additional comments may be submitted for the public record by providing a copy to the chair via email up until the end of the meeting, explicitly stating their desire to have these additional comments included in the public record. Please be aware that the purpose of the public comments period is a devoted time for the school committee to hear from the community it serves. As such, the protocol supports the unidirectional public sharing of public comments rather than a bidirectional conversation. Before we go to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will ask each member if they have any comments, questions, or motions that they'd like to make. I will go through the members for additional comments or questions if time allows. Please hold off on speaking until your name is called and remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. If members wish to engage with other members, please do so through the chair and take care not to interrupt anyone who is speaking. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Before we move to the first item on the agenda, roll call to come to order. Maro?
Yes.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Natasha?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. First, public comments. The one I just emailed, I actually was confused by, and she doesn't want it read at this meeting. It was there was some confusion and on my part. And I thought I had made a mistake, and so I wanted to make sure I remedied that mistake, but I was wrong. So sorry about that. So do we have urgent business?
No urgent business, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Student representatives report.
Rachel's here.
Hi.
Rachel needs to be unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's just me today. Liam's at I think it's a band concert, but I'm here for the both of us. So I'd like to start with the highlights. First, we have the telethon update. They made $31,000, which is $1,000 more than last year, I'm pretty sure. And according to Liam and everybody else, it went smoothly. I know he was a huge part in it. Then we have the chorus and band concerts, which is what is happening right now. We just had the chorus concert and now it's the band concert tonight. We also have the CMR SAC meeting, which Liam got to go to. We both got invited. It's for the student representatives at all schools, but I couldn't make it. Liam somehow biked there though in the cold. Not sure how. But he got to talk about mental health issues and what other schools are doing to fix that. And he said that he met a lot of people and he brought a lot of their ideas to SAC. And we also have indoor track. The first meet was last night, and this year we have 52 students who are doing it. I'd also like to add, it's not in the report, today we had our first DECA conference and 9 of us got to go to the states. They qualified for states. For our conversations at SAC, we didn't have a lot this week, mostly about what qualifies for a student to be their parents to be emailed, so it wasn't a lot, but we did talk about mental health and how homework is a huge factor in kids' moods or their just overall health. SAC is planning to discuss some homework, procedures in the further coming weeks. We also have the first meeting in January to brainstorm meetings about school improvement, to expect a pretty big update after the break for all of you. And we have the reiteration that an additional adjustment counselor would be helpful and appreciated by students and teachers, because this year we had a lot of problems with that. An update on the lunches is that the lunches continue to be incredibly hit and miss. So some weeks we have amazing lunches, and like for example last week it was all just downhill. So we're trying to work on that. And we also, our problems with like the stealing food has gone down. At the beginning of the year we were losing an incredible amount of money, but it's improved recently. And upcoming, we have that basketball starts Friday, December 16th, and the handbook focus groups. Ms. Doktorov is reaching out to parents, students, and teachers for handbook review and suggestions and revisions. And of course, we have December vacation. Any questions?
Thank you so much. Just for when, as far as the things you discussed with the reasons that parents are emailed, what was the concern that the students have, like that their parents aren't being included, they're being like tattled onto parents, or what's the story there?
So some students think that minor inconveniences can send home like an email to parents, and they wanted to talk about it. So we just went over like the levels of bad things you can do and what means a parent would get an email home or a call home, and if the student knows about it and how we're going about it.
All right. Thank you.
Of course.
Other questions? Natasha?
First, I'm really excited because I'm planning on being at that first January meeting, so I can't wait to hear some of that introductory conversations about school improvements and what it is you all are going to be proposing. So that'll be a good some good thoughts to hear about before. I'm excited too. I love hearing that from you. I feel like it's really kind of goes to our mission of what we need to be focusing on for students. So I'm excited to attend, and I know that a lot of school committee members are really excited to be rotating in to attend those meetings during the year. My question, I did have a question about the food contract. This seems, first, let me just think from a budgetary perspective. This might be more of a Wayne question. Our contract that we signed with Winston was 1 year, right?
No, it was 3 years.
It was 3 years. It was a 3-year contract.
Renewable annually.
So it was renewable annually, but it was 3 years guaranteed, or was it 1 year with up to a 3-year like renewal? Can't remember exactly.
It was 3 1-year annuals.
Okay. I guess my question is, I know I really would like to see how the feedback, I'm not really understanding how their feedback and how addressing some of these concerns we're seeing at the high school and in a productive way. I don't know what other efforts are happening, if they're not meeting with the students.
We've only had one meeting so far. I'm one of the 3 people that met with them. I want to meet soon because this week, for example, we had like no pizza at all. There was just like bagel pizza, and students weren't very happy. They were just not
Mhm.
satisfied with like the quantity of the food. But we're gonna meet soon, hopefully, because some things have improved. There were some things added, like the veggie burgers and the soups and stuff, but
That's
not a
good.
lot had improved.
Well, I know that the vegetarian options that was one of the feedback that we heard. There was lack of options available. I saw Principal York. I don't know if she wanted to say anything.
You know, one of the, I want to add something.
Yeah.
And that is, I was a little concerned about the procedure and the process of the students voicing complaints about the food. When I first heard this at a school committee meeting, I checked the food service director. No one had spoken with them. No one had spoken with Sue. And
Okay.
this was very early on when a while ago, when the first complaint that I heard on the school committee meeting, because I went back and checked. And I think that Whitson's ought to be allowed to have an opportunity to correct things before it reaches the level of, say, a school committee, because it looks like they're unresponsive. And if they're not approached first, which I think is the way it should be at the lowest possible level, that isn't the way this started when I spoke to the food service director.
And Liz, I see your hand. Thank you. Wayne, I want to make sure, well, I concur with what you're saying. So it sounds like we have some maybe formalities of how do we escalate things in a way that's more effective to getting feedback where it needs to be in a timely manner. Because you're right, we're hearing about this at the school committee level. This is like the 4th or 5th iteration. And so from my perspective, it feels like there's a lack of responsiveness, but the point you're saying is that maybe the feedback, we need to find a better direct path to channel what the feedback that the students are having, and however that can be worked out. That would be great. Principal York, sorry.
It's also not like we've called, we've asked Winston's to come to talk to them. Like, we're still allowing like students and staff to work with them. Like, we haven't like jumped to that level.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, Brian?
Oh,
Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Okay, Elizabeth?
Me?
I just,
no.
Okay,
Liz.
sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to let you all know that in the past 2 weeks, Whitson's has debuted about 12 different new foods, and they've been offering samples of them to some of the students. And I have seen a real uptick in effort from Whitson's, also to have managers on site and to help us, Mrs. Doktorov and I, with sort of protecting the food and also messaging that they care and giving the students samples. So I have seen a real improvement just in the past few weeks in also the quantities of food. A couple of the things they tried, the kids did not like at all. They tried a baked potato bar with all different loaded toppings. The teachers thought it was the most amazing thing ever. The students were very skeptical and unwilling to try it. So they are trying things. And Mr. White, to go back to your concern, because we have a student advisory committee and they report their true concerns right to the school committee every other week. At the same time that Mrs. Doktorov was trying to get something set up with Ms. Mitchell-Tang, the school committee had already heard about it through this direct student advocacy channel that we have. And that's one of the pluses and minuses of students having a voice with school committee. I think that the pluses outweigh the minuses because this way students know that they have a genuine voice and that it affects the thing that's most important to them, which is clearly their lunch.
I
Thank you.
agree, but the thing is I want it to be fair and balanced. As was already stated, they only heard negative. They heard no positives, that there was any attempts to correct the situation when in reality that has been going on.
So maybe just to add, I will take that as one individual member. My responsibility might be if I hear that feedback again, to first ask, at what point of engagement or how has Winston been engaged along this process to make sure that we hear that additional context of and support the process. I want to make sure we are supportive of the students being able to share feedback with us directly. That is what we ask them to do, but also to allow operationally things to effectively escalate as they need. So I will make note of that myself as well, to be cognizant, to make sure that that is a question we maybe asked you, Rachel or Liam, if these food issues continue to escalate.
Brian?
Thanks. And I'm really not even talking about food at this particular moment, even though I know that's sort of been the topic. I think it's great that we have a student advisory council and the issues come from the students to the school committee. I just think we need to recognize that sometimes those issues are coming directly. So typically those issues will have been flushed out in the background, and a student would bring it up and it might go to the principal or the assistant principal. It might go home, quite frankly. Very often it would go home and a parent might email me and I would then email Wayne or the food service, so back to food. So there's a lot of back and forth that happens. And in this system, it kind of I think it can appear that, oh my goodness, it's such a big deal, when really the kids are just asking questions like, is there enough of this or what about that? Which they're all reasonable questions. And then in this example, food service has an opportunity to respond and they'll try new things and they'll do some different things. But because we're at this school committee meeting, I just don't want us to feel like, oh my goodness, things are crashing and burning and it's such a big deal. It's just a great opportunity for somebody like Rachel to come and say, hey, this is what's going on. And I'm representing my my fellow students. And I think for school committee to hear that, but sort of keep in mind the context that we're just having this conversation, we're working on it in the background. So just to clarify that, because I think this will be continued on as we continue to go, they'll bring things up and they have probably been started to be worked on in the background. And because they're at the school committee level doesn't mean that we've stalled, or it doesn't mean that it's become a problem. It's just communication. And that's what we're keeping, that communication open. Rachel, you're doing a great job. Keep doing it.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Rachel.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're learning
That's a good
too.
reminder, Brian. Other questions?
I didn't have a question, but I am very interested in hearing more about what you are going to be talking about or have talked about concerning mental health and homework. I've been
Oh, she got muted again. Rachel's muted.
really kind of pushing over the last, when I've been on about, family time, especially on long weekends or during vacations, to make sure that there isn't homework assigned so that kids have that downtime that they really need. So I'm definitely interested in hearing more about that. So I'm looking forward to hearing.
We're definitely going to talk about that more in the future. So
Great.
we'll have way more updates about it soon,
Great. Thanks.
of course.
Rachel, following up on that, do you have a homework-free break this break?
I don't even know. I hope so, to be
Okay.
honest. But I think that we're not allowed to get homework over break. Yeah, Miss York can probably answer that. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
not.
she's-
She's
thumbs up.
saying, she's agreeing that there's no homework, I think. She's muted, but
So hopefully, yeah.
Okay, but you
Hopefully all the
guys can
teachers
start
stick to that. But
that. Okay. No,
as I
it's
know,
not, there's no like student initiative to try to get some teacher buy-in to homework-free breaks.
yeah, I think did it change this year that we didn't get homework over breaks? Yeah. So I think our last break, there was no homework from what I remember, unless you had missing work, then it's like your choice to do it or not. But teachers, when they talk about projects that we're doing, they say like, oh, you can work over it or on it over break, but you don't have to if you don't want to. I'm not forcing you to.
Yeah, okay, good. Great.
Mary?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, maybe possibly Principal York, maybe all the principals should resend a note out to their respective staff because we did update the policy. So, and you've already done it. So appreciate that. Maybe at the Fowler and at the elementary school too, just to remind the teachers, because we always say, you know, it's great that we're updating policies, but if it doesn't get out there to the people that are implementing it, it's not very useful. So that'd be great. Rachel, I just wanted to comment or follow up on one of the items that you had brought up at the SAC meeting that I had gone to about, we were talking about the vaping machines and that in the bathrooms. And I thought a few of you made really good point about, you know, that's dealing with it's the reactive piece of it, but to have, so I'm hoping that you're going to do more of this. I know it seemed like you talked about it, about having education also,
Yeah.
so that it's preemptive. And they've been talking a lot about that on the news and that too, but to have the preemptiveness of how dangerous fentanyl is and how easy, you know, it is to get into some, you think you're getting one thing and you're getting, you know, something really bad. So appreciate those efforts.
Of course. A lot of us find it very important to just warn people and make them know that it's okay to like come forward and try to get help. So hopefully we'll be working on that too as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Of course.
I have a spin-off question to that. Principal York, do you know if there's Narcan at the school?
Good question. She's muted again.
Oh.
Oh, muted again.
I think it flipped right back to mute.
Yeah, Colleen.
Oh, I think I'm unmuted for a moment. Yes, the
Sorry
school
about that.
nurse. The school nurse has Narcan and also the SRO, the school resource officer, has Narcan.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you so much, Rachel. That was really helpful.
Thanks,
Of
Rachel.
course.
We
Thank you.
appreciate all the time you're spending.
Happy holidays. Have a
Holidays.
nice
So,
vacation.
Yeah.
happy holidays,
Have a good
everybody.
break.
Thank you.
It's Rachel.
The next item on the agenda, the Maynard Parade update, needs to be rescheduled due to scheduling conflicts with the folks involved. So we're moving on to the superintendent's report. Brian?
I was just unmuting. Super. And I think Colleen, if you want to just put that on screen, the superintendent report for me, that would be great. You found it because things are moving on my screen. But I can start while she's finding that. And just sort of give you an update of some of the exciting things that have been happening. Rachel mentioned one of them was the WAVM telethon last weekend. Really excited. It's always fun to see them. You know, they are just all dressed up and they're very formal and they have the stage manager and they really know exactly what they're doing at that telethon. And there's volunteers all over the building and it's such a great community event. And as she said, they already, you know, they raised $31,000 to support families who need that. So it's just a great event and it was very successful. That's a great picture of the timer, however. Thanks, Colleen. I'll be very quick. I can take the hint. That was nice of you. The athletic
I don't see
update-
what you see, so hopefully it's not too big.
No, now it's better. Thank you. You're doing great. The athletic update. So funny this year, because we rescheduled some of our meetings just due to personnel and budgeting. We actually were double booked on the Fall Athletic Awards, but it did happen last week. It happened to be on our first read of the budget, if you will. But it was a great event. Another exciting thing is we have a DEI committee that we just started, Chuck and I. And it was really exciting. I put out the ask, and as you know, because you all, I'm sure at some point put out the ask for whatever. And you never know, you could get 100 people like, well, we need an auditorium, or more likely you get one person, which is hard when you want more. And lucky for us, we were in the, I want to say 25 people, 26 people, a variety of parents and staff, teachers, administrators, parents, and it was split about 15 or so parents, and about 10 or so staff. So we had our first meeting and it was really interesting, I will say. Everybody has, and maybe it's not that interesting because they signed on to be on this committee, so maybe this isn't so surprising. I was surprised that every single person had some pretty significant level of understanding of diversity, equity, inclusion, of what that looks like in a school, whether they worked, a lot of the people either currently work in a public school, K-12, or they work in higher education or in private industry, so, or they're a stay-at-home mom. So I really covered everything. But even the people outside of K-12 education, they have DEI initiatives at their businesses, and they're heavily involved with that, within the corporate world. So it's really everywhere. So we're sharing surveys internally. We're sharing them with them. We'll be putting a survey out soon so that we can use that, assess that data to then use that in our equity walk in February. So that we're excited about that. Yes.
I have a quick question about this. The DEI committee, how is that going to align with the schools, our school committee, that's the subcommittee? Is there any alignment that will
Sure,
cross?
definitely we'll share information. And our group of, a couple of dozen in terms of school will make recommendations and share all of the information. And there's a lot of synergy, if you will, and intersectionality, because, so for example, the data equity walk, I would think the school committee DEI subcommittee would be part of that as well. They were in the past. And that is the DEI committee.
Okay,
would be
I
part of
wasn't
that
sure
as
if
well.
like some of the goals or what the DEI school subcommittee, if that, like some of that data could be collected from. I just would make sure that their efforts are in sync as much as possible.
Yep.
And sounds like it's a really good segment of the population that will be joining. I'm excited to hear about it.
I think though it's a good opportunity for intersectionality, if you will, but the joining and synergy between the groups and everybody, I think goals will be overlapping and moving things forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Building updates. So this is kind of funny because some of this feels like it's a little out of date because I'm gathering at the end of last week to put up into the folder for this week. So if you know a lot of this, that's okay. But it's just really reminding you and letting you know that earlier in December, there was a lot of professional development work done at Green Meadow on a variety of topics. And actually yesterday, I happened to be walking around and two of the teachers are involved in ongoing professional development, being trained in Norton Gillingham's, and they are just loving it. They were so excited. And it's great to see, it's fun to see kids excited about learning because we see that kind of every day in different classes, but it's equally exciting to see adults excited about learning. So I was excited with that. Fowler, just not even reminding, just they had a fabulous winter concert, which we're glad that we're able to be back and in person and have lots of kids there, lots of families. And, we back to quote unquote normal. So it's really nice. It's very successful. They have a talent show coming tomorrow at Fowler. So lots of opportunities for kids to really just get out there and show their stuff, whether it's musical, whether it's some other talent, and be supported by their peers and their teachers and their families and community. So that's great. The high school, again, well, you heard Rachel talk about, again, December is so hard. There really is never a good time to have a meeting in December because there's always an event, whether it's the music, whether it's the course, whether it's the play, there's always something going on. And likewise, that's all going on at the high school this week, really very exciting. And she mentioned Rachel, that is, mentioned the indoor track, and it's great. We have 50 plus kids involved. And I was talking with one of them today at the high school, and she wouldn't be doing anything else. She's a senior. She had nothing else going on. She loves it. And it's an exhausting sport for them. I mean, I'll just give you a quick little example. They were and I say they because I was there. It was at Fitchburg High School because they have an indoor track last night, and they take the bus, so they're leaving Maynard sometime around 3:30 or so, or 3, and they get to Fitchburg, and they're there until 9 o'clock at night until that event is over, because you don't get to sort of come and go, and it doesn't, whatever event you're running, you're there, and it's indoor. So I found it kind of funny to track. You know, if you're doing the 2-mile run, it is 22 times around that track. She thought it was great. She's like, it feels really fast. And I'm like, I don't even know how you know what lap you're on. But they love it. It's really exciting. And I'm glad that we're able to, that's an ad for us, by the way. So this is only our 2nd year with that sport program. Brian Bellew pushed it, and Mike Aria, athletic director, supported it, and Wayne supported it. And we were able to find budgetary money to do that program. And it is really just great for the kids. So enough about indoor track. I guess I'm excited about it. I'm excited that our kids are able to do it. So I wanted to share that with you. Green Meadow, Colleen, nice job. You got me moving. You should probably show me the clock now and again, because I feel like I'm talking maybe too much. So there's a link.
Tell us everything you have to tell us. We want the information.
All right. So there is the link is there just to go on with that. The MSBA, we originally there were several options of when you could start to submit documentation for schematic design. And we originally had looked at, I want to say December 28th. There's been like, people got nervous, for lack of a better word. They're like, let's hold on December 28th. There's several other opportunities in spring to do that. It does push our vote for the building from spring until fall. Fine. One of the key things I want to impress upon you is both the owner's project manager, the design team, so that's the both of them. And then from the school side, the teachers, the administrators, the building committee, and then I'll speak for you as a school committee, and the select board. Everybody wants to get to yes. I don't think that's really the question and why the pull back a little bit. It's really to make sure that we can get to a positive yes, if you will. There's not really a negative, but we want to get everybody comfortable with the building's a little more expensive than we thought, period. So it's not because we built a more luxurious building. It's a great build. It's a pretty efficient build. It meets our needs programmatically. So from the school side, we're like, yes, it fits programmatically what we said we wanted to do. It includes pre-K. It has space for, a gym, which is adjacent to a cafeteria, which opens up. So it works for the community as well as the school, after hours, weekends. It really meets all the needs. However, and there's no however, that's just a statement. It meets the needs of the school and it meets the needs of the town. And so for background information, I'm not going to read you all the information I submitted or I uploaded to the folder, but it talks about square footage and things like that in terms of how much square footage is and how much the building is. So right now we're in the low 70s. I'll just call it what it is. Somewhere in that 73,
Low 70 millions, right?
73 million, right around there, 73, $74 million as a total. The site is at the right site because of where it is and how it is. There's really no other option there because you need to keep the existing building, because that's where all the students go to school, build the next building, and then transition the kids in and then demo the old building. All the people, there's been lots of questions about safety, sustainability, site design. And I will say we have had the experts, and so like for safety, for example, we look at it and we make our suggestions, but we really take to heart what the chief of police and lieutenant have to say about their level of safety, what the fire chief and the fire captain have to say about their, context of safety, and the community who participate in those meetings, and sustainability as well. There was a big push for, can we be somewhat more sustainable than we currently are, but not to the nth degree, if you will, because, you can go and go and go. And we felt like we can be a little more sustainable and it's still within our financial means, but we can't do everything because we'll be out of whack in terms of how much the project will cost. So MSBA, so this is where it gets, if you're not at those meetings, and they're open meetings, everybody's invited. So we have these discussions about what kind of central heating pump what kind of system do we want? So we choose that. At the end of the day, the eligible costs. So of that, like, if we're looking at, we'll look at the
It's like
version that is like,
350 per square foot or something. It was
so
Right,
that's what they're
reimbursement.
eligible as, right? That's the MSB is what
The top level.
is
eligibility.
360.
Right.
There is nobody that's at 360 anymore because of
Costs.
inflation and cost of materials. So we're up closer to that $650 to $700 per square foot. And it's not because we chose, I just want you to think like, oh, we decided to put granite in the bathrooms or something like that. Or
Cost of materials are going up.
correct. It's really just at the basic level, lumber, steel, everything is more expensive. Work, getting workers is more expensive. So of the $44 million that are eligible costs, they're reimbursing 56% of that, which is 34% of the overall cost, which is almost $25 million, which I think, wow, I just want to like take that in for a minute. That's somebody else giving us $25 million to build a new building for our kids. Phenomenal. It does mean that the remaining, you know, that's like 24/7, the remaining 48.6. So I'm just calling it just under 50, or the 66% of it is local share. So we take the total, we subtract what MSBA would be putting for, you know, what they're going to contribute, and that remaining is what we as a town will have to be able to support. So we want to get ourselves to where everybody understands that. MSBA is going through some tough times right now. I was on a meeting with the Commissioner of Education today. So we're actually in a good place because we're well along the flow for MSBA projects. Once you're in, and you know, if you get a yes vote, which they anticipate you getting, you get to move forward. If you opt out, if you can't get a yes vote, it is not an easy or a likely road back in. And it's much more difficult now because their resources are becoming limited. So they're changing how they're doing things for other types of projects. So I just want you to know as a group that we're doing the right thing in terms of having these discussions, and even the pullback from December 28th to say March or April to move forward with that actually makes some sense. So we can have a couple more forums if we need, more than a couple, as many as we need, so people really understand the process and they really understand MSBA. There was no intent that they were paying 100% of it. If they're giving us, as in the town of Maynard, $25 million free, that is gigantic. There's nobody else offering that I know of. So with that said, that would then actually, I think, work out fairly well. It allows us to have some more conversations. It allows us to have the vote for the building in fall, which means, you know, come this spring when we're at town meeting, we're not fighting for that. That is, we're looking at the budget, we can celebrate the fire station, everything else that's part of town meeting. But then in fall, we're really focused on the building. And then we want to move it forward and we don't want to wait much longer. Okay, thank you, Colleen. That was awesome. I do appreciate that because I could go on about the building because I'm super excited about it. Even though
The bell works.
The bell works, Colleen. Awesome. I will stop talking about the building. I wanted to give you an update.
Can we ask a couple of questions?
And I will do my best to answer them.
All right. So the 56%, I know we were talking about getting the extra 2%, I think, for the lead or for, you know, everything.
Yep.
Is that, so would it be, are we actually maybe looking at 58%, or is the 56 pretty much written in stone?
Nope, nothing's in stone. And I think there at the end of it, that's where that 2%
Okay.
comes in.
Okay, and the other thing, another comment, Justine St. John mentioned last night after you left the budget subcommittee meeting, that MSBA was potentially looking at increasing that maximum $360 per foot because they understand that the cost has gone exorbitantly high for just the same materials.
They are. She's absolutely right. They talked about that today. It's talk at this point. So I don't want to tell you that I think it's going to go to 560 or I have no idea. There is talk about it. They do recognize that it's been low for a long time. It's significantly low now because of the increases.
Right.
So
So it's
she is,
another, yeah, it's another reason for us maybe to wait until October, because hopefully maybe between now and then they'll resolve that.
it may go, absolutely, they have a board meeting coming up.
Okay, and the other thing I think we need to keep telling people, Brian, is that it's not this or nothing. If we don't do this, we're talking about a substantial amount of money going into the Green Meadow Elementary School, potentially totally at our cost, correct?
Correct. It's
So-
not this or nothing. We'll have
Right.
to do something with Green Meadow, and that will not be supported by MSBA.
Right, yeah, so I think
What
that's
you
one-
said was a great way to phrase it, accurate.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Natasha?
Thank you. Yeah, Brian, I was able to attend and I think it was really great. I know we talked about this in our subcommittee meeting, our school one, the parent or the community, the first community focus session. And there's the intent that those questions that came out of there will have an FAQ that will be put together. Is it the designer that will be addressing some of those, or who will be addressing some of
Yeah.
those FAQs that were asked? Because they were really targeted, and I personally would like the answers to hear myself, especially
Sure.
the green aspects as far as the generator. And this was mentioned of probably a couple people, and Aaron, who used to be our DPW guy and had his intimate knowledge of Maynard facilities and as a resident. Is that enough, the generator, if we're all on electric? And so those are really great questions. I think that we need to make sure that have a working FAQ document that we can refer people to and expand on as we get feedback that comes in. And is there going to be an opportunity for us to talk a little bit more about some of those things? Because I have some more questions on what is the best way to share feedback. Is it to you, to Mary, Hillary? Like how do we?
You can send it to me. And I know Phil and Chris. So to answer your question, like who's going to do that? I think Phil may be the guy who actually pulls it all together and sends it to us. But I think depending on the question, so it's a combination. If it's, if someone's asking more of a financial question and a reimbursement question or an MSBA question, that may be more of a Phil and an OPM answer. Like they may address that. If it's more of a site design or a sustainability and an operating system within the new building, that might be more of a designer question, and Chris and his team would answer. But I'll contact them tomorrow to see where they're at with that FAQ. And I know they really wanted to wait until after the holidays to do more of the public outreach. That's been their recommendation from the beginning. So I'm not surprised that we're kind of in December and
that's
getting
totally
ready.
That's totally fine. It gives us time to actually communicate some of those outstanding questions in a little bit more thoughtful way. And I did see the presentation was posted for anyone who wants to go in and watch it, which was great. There was some feedback in FinCom meeting that this week they seem to be a little bit maybe feeling removed from some understanding of the conversation. And I know it was a hot topic at the select board meeting, the last one as well. And the budget piece is certainly, I 1,000% know that having a new school is what we need. I also want to recognize that 3 years ago, $50 million was the whole cost of the school and we would be getting a reimbursement. Now that is the cost the town will have to be. So it's almost like 3 years ago, we would be footing the whole bill. So just that time, that window, that's the burden that's been placed on the town. So I don't want to lessen the concern or feeling like the concern of what that means to Joe Q public working family is yes, we get all these nice things, but that is a very big ask for our community, understandably. And Mary's point, there is no zero cost option. So if we need, because people are saying, why are we doing this? Our students and our staff deserve to be in a building that's not falling around them or failing around them. So I think we really need to do, I know that first scenario when the design plans were put out, talked about that. It didn't put dollars necessarily very clearly to that, but I wonder if there might be some outlining of the systems that we're talking about that would need to be addressed, or maybe that was done behind the scenes, but I wonder if that, no school, this is what we're talking about that needs to be, I don't feel like that's resonating as much with some of the community.
Yeah, we can do that. I can talk with Chris and Phil about how they would suggest proceeding in terms of sharing that information about there is no zero cost answer. So
Right,
what is
like
the
the
cost? if
ADA
we-
compliant to bring a whole
Right.
building up, all of those pieces that we know we would have to do in the absence of a new building. And to
Right.
your point, all absorbed by the town.
Right.
There was some questions. I know the safety piece that you mentioned, that was informed by the police and the fire department as far as the placement, the location of the site where it would be. I also know there was a lot of parent feedback or concern about that as well. And I'm wondering, and I actually have heard from staff some concerns as well, that the playground, where it is in the front, as opposed, when you're driving up the street, like how does that factor in? There was a desire to have the playground more towards the front of that street in the school as opposed to the back.
Yep, that was the recommendation of the experts. So I will say that everything that has come up, and there's lots of really good discussion about it, it's been really vetted at all these meetings, which then comes to a vote. So like the select board, who has liaisons on there, the school committee, the school administration, all the voting members, the townspeople, who aren't necessarily employees of police, fire, or school, they all vote on that. So it isn't like anything.
I don't doubt, hold on, let me maybe rephrase my question. I don't doubt that it was voted on. I
Okay.
think what I'm asking is that Joe Q public need to understand what those specific safety concerns were that really warranted that position or that decision making. Because on its surface, someone who is not in safety is not going to necessarily understand the desire of the design for that. So how can we convey to a parent who is, and this is a comment that was made at the last meeting, right now my child just walks down the sidewalk and goes right to the front of the building. In the future, my child's going to have to walk down and cross over a street to then get into Green Meadow. That's what I want to make sure we understand. How do we counter that with the reasoning? What is the safety implication? Because that's a safety implication, I think, as well.
Yeah, we can
that a-
message that. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Good
so I just
point.
want, I'm not saying there were, I'm sure there were, I imagine there should be experts making these decisions. I'm
Right.
just saying that not everybody is an expert to understand the reasoning behind the decision.
We can
Um,
certainly message that. Absolutely.
Okay, and then the other part too was the location of the building. There was some concern about samplings, and I know this was brought up in the community forum and again at the select board meeting. I think that needs to be outlined in the FAQs and subcapacity, what exact type of sampling and what capacity was done, because a lot of people obviously have a vested interest in the soil and the contents of what's there. And so it would just be good information to really outline what kind of, I think it was borings were done. I don't know, I'm not an expert, but it would be something that needs to be explained to the public who are not experts of that level of effort that was done.
Right. And I know all that was done. That's how they ended up. But certainly we can have them put that, message that so people understand that this is what
Yeah.
we did. This is what we found.
Colleen's gonna ring me in a
I
second.
know, it's okay. I'm ready to move on. But but to your point, I think you asked this earlier. If people have questions, send them to me, and I will send them to Chris and Phil, and we will put that FAQ together. So that's
Can you
fine.
also put on your next presentation the email? I know there's an email address that was dedicated for this type of, like, for people to send that feedback. Wasn't there one that was created? It was Green Meadow School, or I saw it, I think, on the website.
I can send that to everybody. And
Maybe we can publicize that a little bit more pronounced other places where
Sure.
you can get more kind of consolidate that and maybe in a better way.
okay, we can do that.
As a follow-up to that, though, we just want to make sure who is manning that email, because there's nothing worse than somebody sending a question and then going to the outer space. So
I'll make sure
No,
that goes
true.
to Phil.
Okay.
And I think that's who it's been going to, because he's kind of, able to say, hey, I can do this because it's this side of things, or
Right.
it's the design side. But yeah, I will.
Thank
do that.
you.
No, thank you. Good questions. I appreciate it.
Mara or Elizabeth?
No, I don't have any questions.
All
Sorry,
right.
I heard Mara say no questions. Elizabeth, did you say?
I said no.
Okay. So I have a question for the other school committee members. What are you hearing from folks in terms of expectations for how votes will go at town meeting? Because I've heard questions about like the safety and the placement. I've heard questions about how it was decided to go with this design plan. I haven't heard anybody say, I don't think we should get a new Green Meadow. I don't think we should build this. You know,
Oh, I
I
have
don't.
heard that. I have heard that.
Okay.
Yeah. I
I
think
was just,
what I've heard is, I mean, I've seen it on social media. I think the people who are gonna vote no are not people we're gonna see in the community forums, right? Because they're already in that mindset, like, I don't want to spend any more money on or taxes, like from a personal perspective. I think that they're not looking to get to a yes, like we maybe are. They are maybe already set possibly in a no, just thinking about the impact financially. So I don't know how, if they're not engaged in a very way, if they're kind of set in a no, that's a question mark. But I have heard that from people who are just like, I just no out of right away.
part of my concern is I know going back to at some point last year, hearing from the select board, I don't know that you're going to get a yes vote. And I sort of worry that as town officials say things like that, we're putting it into people's head that, you know, maybe they shouldn't vote yes. And I don't want people to be expressing concern about getting a yes vote and then biasing people into not voting yes. And I think that like when I watched the select board meeting and hearing the select board members talk about how they didn't think it would necessarily get a yes, I feel like that cast doubt on the whole project and worried me a lot. So that's one concern I had. And I didn't feel like that was consistent with what I'm hearing from folks, which is probably a little bit biased because I'm hearing from parents of children where they're probably hearing from town members without children. But that was one concern I had. My other concern is, and this is sort of a school thing more than the building itself, is I'd really like if we could get more information, like in the superintendent report about things like this and more details on it, because it bothered me last week that I had no idea that there was an issue and then got a whole bunch of emails and phone calls and text messages from community members who had watched the select board meeting and were panicking, and I knew nothing about it. And I know that that was partly because, or significantly because our meeting was at the same time as the select board meeting. But if messages get to anybody, if they could get disseminated, so we don't have to say, I appreciate your concerns. I need time to go watch a 4-hour meeting before I can get back to you. So that was just my other request.
And Hillary, I will say it hasn't been the majority of people that I've heard, the concern with. So just to frame context there, it has been I think from parents, it has been mostly yes. And I think we all are looking to, I'm totally supportive of this. It is just now that the goalposts have shifted, right? And so now we have to figure out how are we able to navigate that in a way that is less impactful to the town. Mary had a great suggestion at the select board or the town budget subcommittee meeting to consider. Maybe it's a longer bond. There's a lot of there's still aspects to be discussed that folks, and I will say I did speak to a select board member last night, and they said that in the past week they feel more reassured from information that has been shared by the MSBA. So I think that maybe was just I'm hoping that I was a
folks,
momentary.
The public heard her initial concerns. The public isn't hearing that additional information from the MSBA or the select board,
I don't want to call anybody out. I'm just saying that I don't think that the same sediments maybe are lasting sediments that are continuing on. That's my feeling, but I do agree. Once you put something out there and you plant that seed of doubt, it's hard to take back a little bit. So I think the onus is be on us to ensure that the public hear that we are confident that this is the right project and direction for the town to go in. It's just that we're trying to fine tune how we can get there in a
Yeah.
sustainable way.
I think part of the issue too is I think that a lot more information about the Green Meadow building was shared during the select board meeting than is shared during our meetings. And so we're not controlling the narrative there. The select board is controlling the narrative. And if they're feeling concerned and they express that concern, they have all this information no one else has. The community that's watching their recordings of their meeting is saying they have all this information no one else has. They're concerned. If we have that information, we might be concerned too. And we don't have that.
Can we
I
have
feel like we
Jerry?
need a lot
Can
more
we
information.
maybe we invite Jerry to one of our meetings in January, or I don't know, Brian's. Uh-oh.
Yeah. What I would say, so Jerry wasn't at their meeting.
Right.
And I would say, so two things. One is we can invite Phil to any meeting we want. Phil and Chris, they really are the keepers of the information. Phil, as our owner's project manager, can really handle any information related to funding, MSBA, square footage costs, that side of things, and probably even more. I'm just simplifying. And Chris, really representing MVG and the design team, can address any of the questions that have come up. I don't want you to think that they had more information than you've been privy to, or they had more information than the committee has. I think they had questions that they asked of Phil, and he was the only one there and he answered them. That's all. But we can certainly invite Phil and Chris to a school committee meeting. That's perfectly fine. And you can decide if you want to do that, or if there's enough public forums going on that the information's flowing out. And really, we can do both.
Hillary, can I ask, was there did Phil do the presentation, the same community forum presentation to the selectmen, or he was just there?
No, they actually really weren't interested in him speaking very much. It was basically select board concerns and discussions. I was surprised that they didn't refer back to him in any way. They asked him a couple of really basic questions, but they were asking the chair of the zoning board of appeals and Greg most of their questions. Okay.
Yeah, like I said, I have to go back and see it. I didn't have an opportunity.
Yeah. I feel like I don't have fully thought out takeaways from it yet, but I feel like watching that and how things played out last week has me really concerned about the process and the flow of information. And I feel like we need to do something to remedy that. I don't necessarily know the best way to do that.
Does Phil, can I ask, Brian, does Phil send out like executive summaries or reports, or how does he report out? Is it just during the meetings? Is there any type of documentation that he shares in written format?
So for the most part, he is at all, not most part, he is at all of our meetings and he participates that way. They will be taking minutes. We've been taking minutes. We're just shifting who's taking the minutes at our committee meetings. And if there's anything we want from him, that's not a problem. When I say that's not a problem, if we want more of an executive summary of a specific topic or of where we're at, I could ask him for any of those things and he would be able to supply that. He hasn't done that at this point yet. He's really managing everything in terms of the building project. But if we want something, whether it's him to come to a meeting, when we've had our public forums, he and Chris have really been the drivers for the most part of that. Different people will speak and introduce and get the ball rolling. But they're sort of, the key knowledge brokers of this project at this point. But if there's specific things that you're thinking would be helpful, I can speak to him about that by all means.
I know one of the things that I think would be helpful for me is getting some type of timeline public about like this vote in December and stuff. Like I, who am not closely aligned to, wasn't really understanding that this was like some hard decisions from happening right now. I know people closer to it, but I wonder that can help inform the process for people to kind of like, okay, these are when decisions are, so if there's questions that need to be asked, that like, this is what this decision means. Like, and I think that might help a little bit, but have that in a way, because I know there is this on the website, like it has, you open up and it has like the different tabs where you can open, but they're not populated with like deliverables, and it's more like general information in each of those. So if there's a way to put like, when this decision like needs to be made by or whatever, that helps. That timeline I think would really be helpful to post somewhere.
Okay, we have a meeting, I think if on Monday evening. So, and that's sort of a big meeting for us, because that's sort of, we've now shifted things a little bit. So that'll be an important meeting, and I can bring these ideas up, not ideas, but these requests to him to say, hey, can we put a timeline together? I think he's going to want to know, so which date are we looking at?
Well, like
that
all the
will-
major votes that apparently the MSBA has deliverables they want from the town to commit to. And
Right,
so, sorry.
So no, I would say when we get to the meeting on Monday, I think that'll be when we decide, are we looking at whether it's the April, March, April, or is it a couple of months later? And then the timeline will go along with that in terms of the deliverables. If this vote is here, this is when we have to have things submitted. I don't know that there's a vote per se prior to that, but I will talk to him about that and get that in line, get that rolling in terms of a timeline and the FAQ.
Thank you.
And if you do want him at a meeting, just let me know. We can certainly schedule that in.
Thank you. Colleen?
Just a time check. We're 15 minutes past this agenda item.
Okay.
I have one more question. Sorry, Hillary.
Okay.
What else do you think was the information that the select board had that we should be thinking of and more and looking to bring to our meetings? Why did you feel what was the narrative that they were constructing, you think, that we're not constructing here? I didn't watch the meeting, but it does seem like we are constructing a narrative here, so I'm wondering what was different about that.
I don't know that I'm ready to like explain. I don't know that I don't think I could say answer that right now.
Okay.
I feel like Justine specifically has a lot more information than I have. She knew a lot more than I know. And that that worried me now when we're at this stage where there's concerns by community members about things that she said, and I didn't have that same information to be able to say my opinion on it. Like people are saying, what are your thoughts on what she said? And I'm saying, I actually don't know what she said. I have to watch a video, and then I don't have the same background information to draw my own conclusions. And that kind of made me uncomfortable. And I totally understand that the building committee is guiding this process, and the select board has a voting role in this process that we don't have. But I also feel like we have sort of like an underlying responsibility to the schools, which includes the Green Meadow building. And we also have the relationships with community members, where if the select board's saying things that are concerning community members, and we have the access to information that could help alleviate concerns, or at least just, make people a little bit more comfortable with the process, but we aren't able to do that, I don't know that we're fulfilling our obligation in that area as much as we could be. I haven't totally fleshed out my thoughts on this, but the whole thing concerned me over the weekend as I was watching the video and trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah,
Hillary,
I was wondering because I was wondering a couple of things. One, I know that we have this FAQ coming from the builders that will answer some community questions, but I'm wondering if we need to think about putting something together, talking to those town officials. If what you're talking about is she has knowledge or they have knowledge about like how the town works on the town's end, and if we have to gather some of that so that we're putting together something like that on this end, or have people.
I don't know that it's the town so much as Justine is one of the folks that works with the MSBA and goes to their meetings with them. So she is getting information firsthand that.
Okay, so you are talking about information from them. So they weren't talking. So they had Phil in the room, but they weren't talking to him. But she had the information.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Hillary, just to add, I think part of the concern was how the speed at which the project is moving. And I think at the understanding at one point, the project might take 8 years. I think that was one of the narratives that was at the onset.
Mhm.
And that in thinking about planning, there was a lot more time. And I think the reality is hitting home that we actually did not have 8 years. We had COVID that happened. We have all these other things and projects. And I think from a personal level, I think the select board is feeling that pressure of how can we, you know, do all of this within very limited. Maybe it wasn't conveyed in that way, in a very sound way, but I think that's
Mhm.
where that frustration is rooted. Is that this is a lot of demands on our public. We have a larger, older population in our community, and I think it's just rooted in worry. I'm hoping that's really what that means. Is how do we make this work, knowing all of the timeline isn't as long as we had originally maybe hoped it would be to do all this. Anyway, that's me trying to make sense of that.
Brian, I've seen your hand go up and down.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I just want to say, I don't want you, I hope you're not feeling like the select board has more information than another board. I think the people that are on the committee, Mary, Justine, and there's, 20 other people on that committee, have put the time in to hear a lot of these conversations. So like Natasha has good questions about safety. Justine probably, or Mary probably doesn't have that question because she was at the table when all that got vetted. So I don't want you to think like you're on the outs as a school committee. I think you're as included as the select board and every other board. Why they weren't deferring to Phil, I don't know. I wasn't at that meeting. Obviously, I was with you at this meeting.
You should go watch it, Brian, just for context. I would say at some point, if you're able to, it might help you understand where the why we're kind of responding to some of that. I don't know if it was delivered to you, it was conveyed to you in the same way. So that might be a suggestion at some point.
I think that's where the FAQs come in. If we can put something together with facts, because unfortunately, quick little tidbits like that tend to get out into the population faster than we can give the facts.
And agreed. And I was just thinking, as you were talking around the timeline, whether it was several years in the future or shorter, in some ways, the shorter works to our favor because the longer we wait, the more expensive it gets. It's never going down.
Absolutely.
So, and again, but it goes to what you're saying, like put out the FAQ so people understand that, and it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. So I will contact them tomorrow. Absolutely.
Thank you. Do we want to go on to budget?
Yeah, we'll skip this slide, Colleen. And if you want to go, and well, let me ask, we did the budget presentation. I wouldn't think you need me to go back through the budget presentation. There are a couple of new slides. So if Colleen, if you can call up the budget presentation for me, please. I sound hoarse.
I would think if we focus on the changes and the updates.
Yep, and we can do that. We'll call that up and sort of.
It was included in the supporting documents. Everyone has access to it.
Good. So if you can go, keep going, Colleen. We're going to go all the way.
That bar graph was great.
Stop right.
That one.
So this one we can just take it because everybody likes it. Mary likes it. She just
I do
commented
too.
on it. And it is interesting. And I think it is helpful to see if we had, I'm pointing at my screen like you can see me, but you can't. But if we had stayed on that trajectory of the 940, the 950, that all the way, we really would probably be looking at a 2 or 3% increase. But because of that big dip in FY22 to FY23, there's a higher ask. Just, you like the graph? I'm advocating the graph. And we'll go on, Colleen. So again, our proposed budget for FY24 is the 22,845,577, which is all of our operating expenses, our 2 asks, which would be the clerical support person for the district covering the 3 areas of the general Colleen and supporting her and supporting special education and supporting athletics. So it really supports 3 areas at some level. And then the lunchroom and recess monitors for Green Meadow, which increases the instructional time for all of our elementary schools. A level service budget without those asks is 22,744,577. The town recommended, and again, I just take this as, this is the number without all the information that the town administrator says, this is what I think I can do. Doesn't really know yet because he hasn't got all the information. And that number is not close to what we need. It's at a minimum 428,177, $428,177 short. We don't have that in papers and pencils, as we've said, and that's why it's bold and red. That's a reduction in staff. We haven't flushed that out exactly where would that come from, because I don't anticipate us having to do that. And in conversation, I just think the town, we will come to a meeting place that's completely reasonable. We've been strategic in our ask. And if we go on, Colleen, that next slide, please. Again, budget drivers, I'm not going to read them all to you again. They're there. And then next slide, more budget drivers.
Brian, this was
Yes.
a question I just want to ask real quick because it came up the other night as well with the subcommittee. Budget drive, these numbers are based on FY 24 projected?
Projected. Yep.
Is that what, okay, these weren't actual from, I just wanted to make sure that I think that was maybe not understood exactly as it was intended. So this was with the current proposed school budget for FY 24, this is approximately where those expenses would be going. Is that the right takeaway?
Yeah, based on everything we know. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, absolutely. And this is an add slide. So it's one of the changes where we just added so people could see because there's always talk of, do you invest enough in terms of maintenance and grounds and fields and whatnot? And the answer probably is no, we don't. We do the best we can with what we have. And I sort of hear that from DPW and I hear that from town administrator. Everybody kind of has that answer, but you can see there's significant resources from the FY19 all the way up to FY22 that have been put into the building grounds and the maintenance of all of our buildings. So we really do take pride in them and we do work to take care of them.
And this is also with the consideration that we had less of a revolving account to depend on. And so a lot of this was funded from the operational budget too. So.
Correct. Yes.
And this is also essential going back to the MSBA because they, in the past, have said that we had not taken care of our buildings, and that's where our facilities manager position came about. And that's why it's so important that we do keep putting money into buildings.
Correct. And this is part of what MSBA will look at as we look at a new building is, do you take care of what you own? Because they don't want to, I'm not going to go back down there, but they want to invest in a system that's taking care of their buildings because they know that it will then last 50 years. Anyway, next slide, Colleen, please. Thank you. So these were some of the school council requests. Some of them with some reallocation can be done. For the most part, these, which is why they're not additional asks for an operating budget. These because both school councils came to all the school council came to the school committee meeting a couple of months ago and shared these. And then if we go to Fowler, again, some of this looks like it could be related to ESSER. Some of it, for example, I put on here for number 2, we're able to do. So there was an ask to increase music, which then frees up the schedule and that allows kids to be able to take music in course more widely during the middle school years. But it was an ask that we could afford. So we've incorporated with some reallocation from our operating budget. And again, Green Meadow, it's very similar to the Fowler in terms of the tech integration specialist person and the multi-tiered systems of support teachers and what they're able to do. Good things. The number 2 on there is the lunchroom recess monitors, which really allows us to increase significantly instructional time. Yes. So
Brian, does that mean also less transitions, right? Because we're expanding their instructional time.
Yes.
Because I know that was one has been a concern from parents in that younger group is that there's a lot of transition sometimes to specials and so this will lessen that during the day as well.
That's correct. Yes.
Great.
And Mara has a question.
Okay.
In the last slide,
Uh-huh.
there was an asterisk.
There was. Let's see where. And so that was just connected to sort of the general statement that a lot of programs that we order now, regardless of content area, come with technology resources
Oh,
and
okay.
components as part of the program.
That because it's not attached to the
Yeah,
many.
it got fun. It got a little
Okay,
disconnected when it
okay,
went to the slide.
thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. So this was, which I talked about a little bit, but it gives some of the specifics of what this ad position would do in terms of helping with Medicaid, helping with maintaining documentation for circuit breaker and special education and IEPs that need to be filed and kept and et cetera, including and also transportation, purchase orders. And then we look at it. So that's sort of some of what Colleen does, some of what Rhonda does, those two areas, general support for a superintendent and special education, student support services, and then athletics as we're moving towards electronic payments and tracking kids, how many kids are playing and what are our resources and registrations and physicals and fees. I mean, as wonderful as athletics are, and they are, there is just so much work behind the scenes to arrange transportation and making sure all the forms are filled out and all the physicals are done and the payments, and to get ourselves, as I talked about, get ourselves to Fitchburg and then participate in multiple, events and then get everybody back on that bus and back home. So there's just so much going on there. So this position would support those three roles, making those jobs manageable. They're they are beyond capacity, what those individuals are currently doing. And yep. And then again, this goes back to increasing instructional time at Green Meadow and having less, it may be less transition during the day for the little kids, which that doesn't sound like a huge deal, but when you see them even go out to recess, it's like an orchestra. They have to put their snow boots on and their hats and their gloves, and many of them need help doing that. And then 100 of them go out there and then they come back in. So reducing the transitions is a big win for us and for the kids, quite frankly, and the teachers. So those two things are our asks. And you saw from what each of the school councils asked for, there's a lot more that people want. There's a lot more things that we would love to do, but we know that we want to be strategic. And the graphs, I know Wayne's somewhere on the screen. I can't see his face, but he's here, loves the pie charts. And it's nice because it's a visual and it shows that the majority of our resources go toward the buildings, the students, and the staff. And you can see sort of the top half of that slide is really Green Meadow, Fowler, and the high school. And then on the bottom half, those big areas are special education, some curriculum, information, athletics. That really takes up. And if we go to the next slide, Colleen, please. It's in percentages, and it's just about 95%, 94% and change that is focused on those areas. And then it's the support stuff behind the scenes that makes things run. There's some in, the business office has a piece, and the superintendent's office has a piece. Health services has a piece. But it's really focused on the buildings, the staff, the students. So again, this is sort of the same slide, but just nice to, this resonates with me because it resonates with Rachel. If we go back to the very beginning of our meeting today and we talk about DECA and what the kids are doing in business, this connects to that. So we may not have asked for a business teacher or an expansion in that, but that's an area that we're focused on and working on reallocating funds to pursue expanding business and DECA and maintaining a DECA club, expanding computer science, which we're currently working on. Same thing for performing arts. And I talked to one of the teachers at Fowler this week who's super excited about expanding the computer science offerings and the career exploration at Fowler so the kids can then have some experience and then they get excited about that as they're looking at the high school. So I'm not going to go on and on because we did this a couple of times. And if you're on a subcommittee, you're like, yeah, you did this 4 times. I know. But this is exciting stuff. This is where stuff we're doing for kids.
Brian, can I just ask a question? And I saw that Mike Both is here too, having to do with the Fowler piece of the career exploration. And that I know that one of the reasons that the Ed Foundation had funded the NEPRIS program for Jean LaBelle 3 years ago, maybe now, was because it was also going to go down to the Fowler. And I think Mike is part of that committee. So I'm hoping that that's part of this whole career pathways piece down at the Fowler.
If Mike wants to,
Is he?
you know what, I can only see 3
Yeah.
people. I'm sorry. If Mike is there and knows the answer, he's welcome to respond to you. If not, I can get the answer and I'll let you know. I just don't know it off the top of my head. But I do know, so I didn't hear anything, so I'm just keep going. But I do know that the current computer science teachers really at the Fowler is super excited to get kids involved in the coding, et cetera, and just really looking at career exploration so that they have a good sense of what their options are as they look at high school.
I'm wondering if Colleen might unmute him just in case he wants to say something.
Oh, yeah.
He's muted right now.
Colleen, can
I
you?
have
unmute?
asked, he is not unmuted.
Okay, all right. Well, then
right.
later would be great. Thank
All
you.
right. Perfect. And then just really, I appreciate that all the time and the energy. And I know we have done a version of this presentation for the school committee a week ago and for the budget town subcommittee and shared it with the town administrator, the select board, and our own budget subcommittee. So I appreciate all the time and the effort people are putting in to advocate for the schools. I think it's a very reasonable, solid asks, and it does maintain the good programming that we added last year in terms of some of our special education programming, which has been phenomenal and was needed and is paying off. And this moves us forward slowly but surely to maintain. And for people who don't know, which I know everybody on the screen does, but even some of our own staff I talked to did not realize that WAVM is one of the few high school programs that are FCC certified.
Mhm.
So that is huge. And we have other super exciting things to talk about, but I'm not asking for any money for them. I just know that, you know, the more we can do little step by step and is good for our students and our staff and our district. I'll leave it at that. So what I would ask is that you vote to approve the proposed budget so it in effect becomes your budget.
So voting at this stage isn't to approve the budget necessarily, it's more to approve the request, right?
Right, we would be voting to
Right.
approve to move Brian's request number, the number forward. And so he can present that as the school's request in like for budget purposes, and then that gets deliberated.
Okay. Do folks have questions?
I have something I just
questions.
wanted to add, but I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to
Yeah.
ask their questions.
My question is, so we knew that the ESSER positions weren't going to stay in place next year, or most of them weren't going to. The ones that are not included in the requests, like I know Green Meadow is requesting to continue some of those MTSS positions. So the ESSER funded positions at Fowler that aren't included on the requests, is Fowler believing that they don't need those now and they're okay without them? Or is it something that they really feel like is a huge benefit and is going to be a big loss, but that there's no money, so they're not requesting it because there's no money anyway?
It's a great question. And I would say for all the schools, including us, that use their money like this in terms of multi-tiered systems of support individuals and data coaches and et cetera. All of those positions have been incredibly valuable. And I'm proud of the work that the way we've structured it, I thought was phenomenal. So that our teachers who stepped out of the classroom and sort of took on this new role, but have vast experience in Maynard and in their curriculum and did that, they've done a fantastic job. Would we love to maintain that? Who wouldn't? But that is financially, that wasn't part of the plan. So as we planned, the administrators plan that they would then be able to go back to the classroom. And the people who took their classroom job have done a great job. And they also knew that, hey, this is an opportunity for me to get some classroom experience. So it's a win for them as well. And, you know, and just thinking about that, Wayne has done a really nice job of compartmentalizing, if you will, our operating budget and our ESSER funded budget so that we're not confused and we don't have, which I think some other systems who superintendents that I've talked to that have sort of melded their monies that's a potential cliff that they've hit. They're like, so now what? Because we've mixed that. And Wayne has done a nice job of keeping those separate. So as much as you said, would they be great to keep? They would. We're just not in that position right now. We're working to do some reallocation so that we can keep one here, possibly one there. But overall, we will not be able to maintain that number of additional staff.
I think it's great that we kept the budget separate so it's clear. I had said this last week, but I really wished we had added something to this presentation saying that this request doesn't include maintaining those positions that have been such a big help towards improving the ability to use data and the extra support for kids who need it. Because even though we won't get it, then it's something that, it's still a loss for the students and a loss for the school system to lose those positions. And we're sort of taking that on. We knew we were going to take on that loss, but we're sort of taking it on silently, in that the parents and the community don't understand that this request that's $400,000 above what the town administrator suggested is still a really big loss. That still involves losing extra guidance counselors, extra support for kids that have losses from COVID, extra coaches to help teachers utilize data. Like, that's already a really big cut. Even though the budget was in a separate pot, it's still, in terms of what the students were able to access and benefit from, it's a loss. So I was sort of hoping that we could have added something about that to this presentation so that it was clear that this $400 request is really conservative, but very, very conservative. Because I feel like when FinCom and the select board look at this request, they still see it as requesting $400,000 more than they want to give. Not necessarily understanding that really what we need is 100, double that.
Level service basically is level service that we have now is including funding by grant money, I think is what you're getting at, right? And so level service in the future, this is really operational budget requests that we're asking about. And I think that's the distinction, right? Is how you're.
But the kids and the families don't care if the money came from ESSER or the town. They just care about what services they were getting. So we're really not going to get level services next year. And I don't know that that's necessarily clear from the presentation for the folks involved.
I would be just concerned. I'm just thinking about, and the data piece I think is important, Brian. And it sounds like you are thinking about the best way that we can in some way maintain that, because we're always going to have data that needs to be analyzed. And I'd hate to go back to 3 years ago when we, everyone was kind of working in silos and there was just disjointedness in some areas and not alignment. I think that those data teams have been helpful, especially as we're trying to align curriculum and all the math and the literacy and monitoring all of that. So in some form in the future would be great to get an update on what the data monitoring effort from that perspective alone, what you envision that evolving after we're, how is that going to be absorbed or where? Sure. Because what areas may not be able to be absorbed, right? What tasks are we just going to lose from the day to day? So that would be helpful to have maybe in a separate conversation, because I think they're very critical in the roles that they do, and I'd be understanding what that impact is, what we're still able to retain and what we're not.
We can do that. And one of the things, sorry.
No, you go ahead. Sorry.
All right, I was gonna say, one of the things that we have been able to shift is we were creative in the sense of we went from an assistant superintendent to a director of curriculum, who's actually on the screen. And Chuck's doing a phenomenal job of not allowing us to revert back to silos. So the committees that are up and running, whether it's the math review committee, the math review cycle, or the professional development committee, those groups are representative from each building. And there's a very positive energy at each of those committees that is you know, whether it was due to the pandemic or whatnot, that really wasn't in place for a little while. And it's back, and it has a very positive feel to it. So, and I think that, and I guess I bring that up because I think that does have the capacity to help us with some of these other things when we start to talk about data and what does that look like at all three buildings and how are we collecting that and who's doing what. He's very skilled at pulling those people together and having their voices heard and moving things forward in that way. So that's a very positive change for us that we're not losing. You know, that's a gain.
I think you
Right.
have a really great team that's so creative and working with such limited budget. The admin in the high school, in terms of pivoting to meet the student requests and the student needs, and at the other schools as well. I just wish we didn't have to put it all on them to be so creative. And
We'll keep
I'd
working
like
at
the
it
town
and
to
trying to,
recognize it.
fair enough. And we can work on some separate presentations and sharing of that without having, and maybe it's an addendum to this. I can work on that with Charles and Wayne and Chuck and just be able to share that information. So they see what everything you're saying, all good points. All
Yeah.
good points.
I think maybe if we could even just add something like using the terms that Natasha said, like the level service, like, you know, please note that true level service would require this much funding. However, we recognize that that was utilizing ESSER funds and we're trying to be conservative and meet the limited needs of the town. So just that it's there for them when they make those discussions, because I feel like listening to select board and FinCom talk about our budget request, it's like the school's asking for all this money, the school's asking for all this money, the school just keeps wanting more money, and they don't understand or appreciate how much you and your team are really trying to be as conservative as possible and creative as possible to work within the town's limits.
No, we can work on that and actually add a slide. We were being very cognizant to keep this presentation in terms of an operating budget and not commingle grants so much. It just, but to your point, I think we can articulate an operating budget versus some of the people that are grant funded and what we're not asking for and we know we're losing. So we can do that.
Thank you.
Suggestion.
Thanks.
The only other thing I wanted to mention, which came up in the subcommittee, is the PEG access, which is a significant piece of the FY24 budget is yet to be determined. The PEG access, just to recap, is what we know. Right now, we get funding from Comcast and Verizon. The Verizon contract expires in next December 23. And so what that means is we get about 180,000 from each of the contracts. So half of Verizon's contract from after December to the end of the year is in limbo. It is, we don't have any reassurances that it will continue. So that's about $90,000. Now the town is committed to the WAVM program because that's what PEG access funds primarily. But I just wanted to put it out there because it is an area that we are having ongoing discussions. We've asked, it's being negotiated by an outside counsel. So there isn't much updates, and we've been asking, Mary and I've been asking constantly at every meeting, what's the status? You know, I even asked like, hey, can we do like a 1-year renewal just to get us through at least FY24 so we can kind of, you know, plan a little bit more. Didn't seem like it was going to go anywhere because I think, you know, Greg has to work with outside counsel on that. But anyway, so that might come up in a future conversation because that is money that needs to be found if you know, if the Verizon contract doesn't come to fruition to fund, you know, another 5 years or whatever.
Yep. We'll stay abreast of that for sure.
Yeah, but I just want to make sure the rest of the school committee also is aware that that might be a talking point in the future. Should we go ahead and vote? I don't know if
I'm not seeing Elizabeth. Elizabeth, are you all set?
Yep, I'm all set.
Okay. I think if you want to make a motion, we're ready.
Oh, good. Let me pull up the number again. Can you I just close my screen? Darn. Colleen, do you have that slide up again? No. I will make a motion that we approve the superintendent's FY24 recommended budget request for $22,845,577 to submit to town administrator.
Second,
Second.
Discussion?
Brian, Wayne, thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody who worked on this and is continuing to work on it and going to all the meetings. Thank you very much. Very, very, very much. Our staff and our students are very, very blessed to have you all advocating in their corner.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to do it.
Okay, roll call vote. Mauro?
yes,
Natasha?
Yes,
Mary?
Yes,
Elizabeth?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Good luck with the next step, Brian.
Yeah.
I need it. Thank you very much.
oh, look at that. We got a comedian in the audience tonight. All right.
Okay. Student Services Department goals. Are you starting that, Brian, or are we jumping right to Jeff?
Well, I just want to say, Jeff's been with us now. I'll start, I guess, to answer your question and introduce Jeff. He's been with us the same as I have. Actually, a lot of the administrative team is on year 3 and doing a great job finding their way, making connections, moving things forward. So I will turn it over to Jeff, and he's done a really nice job with Student Service Department, which in a small district takes on a lot of departments that in some other bigger districts aren't all part of student services, but they all intersect. He does a nice job pulling them all together, and he's always advocating for students and what's best for our students. So that's why I appreciate him in that role. So Jeff, why don't you share what you have, please?
Okay. Thank you, Colleen, for pulling that up. If you can pull that up. That's great, thank you. Now, in the interest of time, I have my timer going. So I will stay within the 20 minutes. I have my notepad, so if there's questions that are asked that I can't answer or require a level of detail that is tremendous, I'll take care of that and get that to you. Now you had this document in your folder, and I know Natasha and the CPAC have probably seen this for the last, they've had it for probably the last 4 weeks. So my assumption is if there are major concerns or questions, they would have been brought up before. I'm just going to draw your attention to column number 2. These are student service goals, not Jeff goals, student service goals, but obviously as director, these are my goals, incorporated into my goals as well. There are 4 areas of which you can just see 2. I can only see 2 on the screen. One being compliance, another one being continuum of services, the next being fiscal responsibility, and the next being community connection. Now there's in the next column is just some of my own notes about how we're going about achieving some of those goals. And then I have the assessment section. And these goals are not unique to Maynard. These are goals that should be in every single district. The big one being you need to follow the state and federal regs. Now, the state is nice. They go about helping us, making sure we do that by doing timely reviews. This year, we have our tiered focus monitoring review. It's a self-assessment where we go over, well, I'll just show you this. Okay, there are a tremendous amount of criterion that we have to look at and answer to, and then submit to the state by the end of, I believe it's the end of March. They then come in the year after and make sure what we said we're doing. They pull a number of files. They go from page 1 of the files all the way through to the end, and make note of where our strengths are, where we are compliant, and where we might need to pay attention and do something else. So that's a big part of the compliance with Fed and state timelines. We have 3 team chairs, outstanding team chairs. They are the boots on the ground in the schools. They're the ones that run the IEP meetings. They do a lot of the screening when parents have questions about what's happening in the school. They make sure as far as initial evaluations, all the reports are there and ready. So they themselves are a big part of making sure that we are in compliance. Now, as far as continuum of services, there's a couple different pieces in there. There's the special ed, there's the health services with the 4 RNs, as well as working with the psychologists and the counselors. And as I've already mentioned before, one of my plans is to take the money I've been using to pay for a contracted psychologist to make sure we keep up with our assessments and put that towards making sure we have our 3 school psychs, the one who is long-term subbing for Amy, as well as when Amy comes back after having her twins. I know someone mentioned about MTSS and making sure we're not losing counselors. Right now, as far as an ESSER, we are keeping an elementary counselor at Green Meadow. So she's covered through next year. It's the year after that I have to start thinking about next year. How am I going to be able to make sure we maintain that level of counseling services? Going down to the budget, Rhonda will tell you very clearly that she's been more involved with the budget over the last couple of years than ever before, because I like to be involved with the budget more than perhaps previous directors. I like to know where the money is, how we need to move it, and just maximize the best I can. So that's on a regular basis. Wayne, with his department, they give me feedback as far as this is where the grants are, this is what money has left, and as well being able to work cooperatively with him to, if we need to adjust and shift some lines to make sure, depending on what the kids are presenting, making sure they get the resources they need, or the staff that need particular materials, or if they want to go to particular professional development. So that has been a very good working relationship. As far as the community connection, that starts with the IEP meetings, where the parents who have been told their child is not making effective progress in general ed, oh my gosh, my kid's special ed, what does that mean? So they're the ones that take the parents and support them through the process, primarily with Laura at the elementary school. And then with Chris and David, it's now we're doing reevaluations to see if the children still qualify, making sure IEPs are created and sent out, supporting parents who still have questions about the IEP. So that's a big part of our connection to the community, as well as with CPAC. And Natasha can go into CPAC quite a bit as the connection between the school committee and the CPAC. And they weren't able to put their presentation out there, but I'm sure that is forthcoming. And I believe we have our next collaboration meeting in January. One of the things that we need to do is have a basic rights scheduled. And I know they'll be working on that, and we'll have that in the spring. And hopefully we'll have some other professional development paid by the district, and that could go out to the community, the whole community, not just of parents of kids with special needs. So that's a very, very brief overview. And looking at my timer, boy, we have 14 minutes and 8 seconds for questions on face-to-face now, but understanding that I'll answer any questions afterwards, and any detail you'd like.
Thank you. That was really helpful. I appreciate you putting this together. I'm not sure if it was something that was done in years past, but it's helpful to see. Do folks have questions?
I mean, the question I have is I don't understand. So I don't understand the format. So it says it's goals, but there aren't actually any goals. There's just goal areas, and then there's assessment measures, but I'm not sure what success looks like. And I'm also not sure if this is what this document's supposed to be telling me, or if it's just kind of an overview of what you're doing in general.
If you'd like it in a different format, you let me know. Compliance with all federal, state, and timelines and requirements, that is a goal. And how do you even know if you achieve that? Well, that's when the state is coming in. I can say to the state, we've been in compliance. The state coming in will be checking on that as well. As far as having a continuum of services, that is a goal. And a continuum is a range of services to meet the needs of the kids coming in.
No, I get
Right,
it.
so that's a goal.
No.
Being fiscally responsible, I believe that's a pretty good goal. And you can check with Wayne. I'm pretty sure that's a big one.
All right.
Yeah, Jeff, thanks for the performance. But what I'm trying to say is that
Excuse me?
my understanding is that these are like, this is kind of like the areas of your work. And so what I'm trying to ask is, my understanding of goals is that they're kind of something that stretches you beyond your usual work time. It's like, this is my actual job all the time, and here are the things I'm doing to try to stretch beyond what I've done last year. How I'm always improving my performance and my service.
Elizabeth, if you'd like to have a different setup for the student services goals, not Jeff goals, student
Is it okay if I
services
just finish
goals,
my question?
please let me finish.
Oh my God.
Oh my
Please share
gosh.
please share that with Brian, and I will get that to you.
I'm not trying to be
Okay.
offensive. I'm actually just
So
trying to ask something.
let's have everybody not talk on top of each other. Like, let's have Elizabeth go, and then
Thank you. I'm
I'll
trying to
call on Jeff
understand.
after.
I don't understand why. I don't know what's going on. All I'm asking is, I don't understand. I'm trying to figure out why we're getting this presentation. If it needs to be in a different format, if there need to be goals, or if you're just trying to let us know, like, basically what's happening in your department. And either way is fine. I just want to know what your intent is, so I understand where to go with the questioning from there.
So this was a request for that had been on last summer. I was going through documents on the school committee drive and saw in a list of like previous year's agenda or in a list of suggested agenda topics that have been put together in the past, student services goals. And I thought that would be an interesting thing for us to hear about, because I feel like particularly with special ed, we hear about it either as far as the budget goes or when parents have complaints. And so it would be like sort of to have proactive information from Jeff about what he's working on and what the goals are of student services. So it was it's not a requirement that's from anybody outside. It was something that
I like the idea of it. I just will say, I think
Yeah.
when done with fidelity, the outcome is a very important one to achieve, to understand how that segment of that department is operating.
Yeah, so I don't think creating SMART goals the way we do, that people are doing as individuals or anything. It's more just for our benefit to understand where
Right.
his focus is laying.
Right. I mean, I'm imagining he is tasked with creating SMART goals because everyone in a school system is, but that's what I'm asking is, am I looking at what that is supposed to be, or was this something else? So what you're saying then is that you asked to just kind of get a general overview of what the department is kind of working at this point, because you saw that somewhere
Yeah.
else. This is what he put together.
So let's hear from Brian, because he's raised his hand a couple times in response to what you're saying.
And I didn't really mean to make my hand go up and down and up and down. I just hold that button and that's what happens. But you actually pretty much already said what I was going to say. Was the intent of this document and was someone, and maybe it was Hillary, I don't remember who, but the school committee said, hey, can we get an update and sort of the goals for the department? It's something like if I had asked, just for example, like Wayne could have said, here are the goals for the department. And actually it may feel a little out of place because as our agendas get packed, I'm like, oh, can we move this back? And so poor Jeff has had this in there for several weeks, maybe even a couple of months. And I just always kind of juggle it. And it felt like it fit tonight, but I realized we're now into December. It might have felt like it made more sense in September, October for everybody. So to answer, this was in a response to a request from the school committee, just to share what are the goals of the department, separate from SMART goals that people have. Just to be clear about that.
One area that I was also interested in, if it was something Jeff wanted to share, was sort of like, is there anything that you particularly would like that's different than how things have been done in the past that you would like, the direction of student services to go? Just if that was something that you had been thinking about. But I also, Mary said her hand raised for a little while, so I want to make sure Mary can talk.
It's okay. Yeah. No, thank you for this presentation, Jeff. I like any time that we can, I really like the fact that you're taking advantage of our internal psychology council versus the contracted, because they know the kids and they build a relationship and that kind of thing. So anytime we do that, I'm really pleased. I thought, and maybe this was a different presentation. I know when we met, I think, I don't know, in the summer, whatever, that there was conversation that the co-teaching model was not working for the last 2 years because of COVID, basically. And I thought we were going to reassess that to see If we can reinstate part of it, reinstate all of it, because there was an awful lot of work that went into coming to that model by a good number of teachers in that. So maybe this wasn't the format, but I still would like to see that maybe in January.
I think we had that on the rolling agenda.
Thought it was
For
October.
another
I
date.
had a note for October,
Okay,
but yeah,
and
but I
it's
know
been moved.
we've been so busy. So, but I like this I really, your department tends to move on its own. So seeing this layout like this is really helpful. Thank you.
Natasha?
Jeff, thank you very much. I know that I have been one person who's wanted to get you more time in front of a larger audience as well to talk about some of the things that we don't hear in a larger public view always that do impact the school in many areas. So I appreciate the lens that you're putting to. I understand, you know, in thinking about the delivery, maybe expectations were varied from different members. And so I will say, you know, I'm sorry that maybe we didn't convey the format exactly to the work that you put forward to us. But because this is also a work in progress, I imagine that I appreciate the effort in outlining the things that you are working on. A lot of these I think are some of the bread and butter of what your department does every day. And so just keeping, you know, keeping a lens on the financial responsibilities. I appreciate you being closer to the numbers wherever you need to. I have a question about that. Is there anything in your time that you've been here the past couple of years that you have noticed more of a trend that's happening in regards to the monies and how it was spent maybe years ago and how you're trying to reimagine the best use of it? It sounded like one of the areas was leveraging less contract service and you know, seeing how we can do more, which I think is great, because I know we did that with nurses at one point. We did contract and we realized that was not the best model for our students, and we brought the in-house nurses back. Is there anything else that you're identifying as potential opportunities, maybe not ready now, but on the horizon to look at?
Well, we are fortunate in that we don't spend as much money on legal issues. I don't know if that's because of the approach of the team chairs and myself, but we are spending less, which
Mhm.
allows me to move some of that towards making sure we have a psychologist in every single building and not have to contract out. I do want to look at, we do contract out for physical therapy. And I
Mhm.
do believe that is an area I want to look at closer, you know, keeping in mind that, you know, there's benefits that are connected too, even though we're not paid the benefits. Natasha, I am aware of that as well.
Yep.
And to answer, you know, Mary's question, yes, co-teaching is one of on the continuum of services. That is one of the options that the principals and the special ed staff have. And if they feel that is the most appropriate way to serve a group of students, and maybe it's in a number of grades, maybe it's in one grade. We always have classrooms that have 2 teachers in them. But to say, well, that classroom's going to go for almost the whole day, except for the specials with a special ed and general ed, you still have the question, well, what about the other kids in that grade that have IEPs? Who now serves them? So there is a staffing consideration also, but we'll make those recommendations probably closer to February to the principals. And what I did in preparation, I actually surveyed my special ed staff at Fowler and Green Meadow about their perceptions of co-teaching, what worked and didn't. So I have that data as well that I could share with you folks. But yeah, it absolutely is on the table. If the staff is saying, you know, we need to do this in XYZ grade, or we can do something different and serve the kids, that's something I take into consideration, and then I share it with the principals. So no, I imagine we'll have that. You know, if we were going to do it and say in every grade from K to 6, you're looking at adding another 6 teachers.
Mhm.
And it's like,
Well,
oh,
weren't
and then
those
the
teachers
question
already added?
becomes,
Sorry.
no, I missed it.
Yeah, weren't those teachers already added by 5 years ago when the schools implemented the co-teaching model?
I believe co-teaching was recommended in 1819, so it started, I believe, 1920, based on the data that I have.
Oh, dear Lord, my
as
mind
far
went
as-
My
to like,
daughter was in my daughter was in the co-taught classroom in 2018.
Okay,
So it was
I was just-
definitely implemented.
I'm just
prior to
looking
that.
at the data that was given to me when I came on board. I could just point out what the numbers are now and what the kids' needs are now. And that co-teaching is an option that the teachers could have and recommend. I will tell you, based on the survey, less than half of the teachers support it, which is curious. So I need to look into that and try to understand a little more why. In the survey, I have a qualitative section where folks who just write about what worked, what didn't. And some say, well, in the right spot with the right teachers, with the right kids, it's wonderful. And it depends on the population. So we'll have more information on that probably, like I mentioned, in February.
Yeah. I think that when we put that on the agenda, I think we like to have some of the teachers that taught in the co-taught classrooms come and speak to us about their experiences, because I know, some of them thought that were really excited about the model, but felt like they weren't receiving the support they needed to implement it with fidelity. And then some of them felt like they weren't allowed to give input on what kids would benefit or would work well in the model. And so it was sort of set up for failure in some cases. And hearing directly from them, because the trial happened before you were here, could help some of that information get disseminated to
No,
everybody.
that's fine. Pick a date that you'd like to have them come to school committee. They might ask to be reimbursed, they might not, but understand that, they may not be able to give the 7 to 10 time because a lot of them have kids, but just pick a school committee time and date. And I'll put it out there unless you guys want to do the invite, and I don't know how best to do that. So they know it's coming from you folks.
Yeah.
That's fine. They're wonderful. These are not
Yeah,
shy
I'll talk
folks.
to Brian about it, and Brian will work on that.
My special ed crew, they are not shy.
Yeah.
They will gladly come and share openly. We might
We have
need more
really fantastic special ed staff.
Yes, they might need more than 20 minutes. But you let them know when to come and they'll show up.
Yeah, they can have as much time as they need. Maro?
I had a question about your first assessment measure in the first block, the DESI TFM. Is it the same thing? It's just named differently as the CPR self-assessment?
That's exactly it. And there is a tiered focus monitoring handbook that I could share with all of you. It's 60 pages, I think, of riveted reading. If you really want to know exactly what sections, I'll boil it down to maybe the areas that they're going to be looking at, because there's two sections. There's a section A and a section B. The A they'll look at this year, and then in about 3 or 4 years they'll look at the B standards. But I can get that to you folks. But yeah, it's pretty much the CPR. They've just renamed it.
Okay, so because I know that we went through the CPR, at least the last time I was on the school committee. So just, does that mean that we haven't had an assessment since then, or?
Well, the way they do it is every 3 years.
Okay.
So when I came in, they were just finishing up because COVID kind of bumped some things. So I had to follow up on some things that, Carol was involved in and the whole district was involved in. So we took care of that. And now here they are coming around with a self-assessment and then the on-site visit 3 years later. And they're also going to be looking at EL as well. English language learning. They're going to be looking at that as well as some civil rights criterion also through a self-assessment this year and then on-site visit the year after that. I'm not anticipating any major issues at all, but there probably are some areas that, oh boy, we might need to spend give a little more attention, especially when it comes to equal access so that everybody has access to all the programming. That might be one area they're particularly focused on.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I know my time's up, but if there's more
No,
questions.
it's fine. Yeah, no, we need to ask the questions we have to ask regardless of the times. Mary?
Yeah, mine's just really quick. It's just a follow up on the co-teaching. If we could also include asking the regular teachers that were complementing, that were working with the special ed, the complementary between the two of them, I'd like to hear from them also.
Content teachers.
Yes, thank you.
I have a few questions too. I get the letters confused. I call it PQRS, but I don't. It's 3 letters. But through DESE, the complaint thing that parents can file.
Yep.
I'm sure you know what they really are because I'm making up the letters. Do you know roughly how many parents are filing those complaints, like over the past couple of years?
That goes into our determination, and they found that in our rating, and they found that we have no needs improvement areas. I can look exactly at how many they have filed. And the question is, well, folks can file a bunch, but how many did the state find that we had issues with? And I think there was one when I first came in, and that was about not being clear about how transportation is provided. I came in August, so this was during that summer. There was one that we cleared that one up. There was another, I think on an IEP, and then we went through with a resolution agreement with a parent on that one. So I'm aware of 2 right now. There may have been a third, but I can get you the exact numbers if you'd like.
Okay. I don't want to create work for you, but if it's something that you happen to, that's an easily accessible number, that might be interesting, but don't go out of your way, for that.
But it's not like it's our number. Oh, do I dare say it out loud? Our numbers have been small.
Yeah, that's great. I expect that's quite an improvement from before you arrived, because I had heard about more than a handful from one year specifically.
Yeah, and you actually went to a hearing. You actually went to a hearing, I think in 2018 or 19, which is rare. There's maybe 24 hearings every year. So the fact that we were one of those out of the whole state, that changes a relationship with the community and the school at times. And Rector and CPAC, I think, was involved too. And that's tough to come back from. Whether whoever ends up on the quote unquote winning side, no one really does. And fortunately,
we spend a lot of money on things that aren't helping the kids. Like, I'd rather our money go towards helping the children than fighting the families, regardless of what the situation is.
And one of the things I'll tell my team chairs and parents too, if we agree to disagree and we've done something incorrect, then okay, let's try to correct it. And if we need to have the state involved, maybe not at the hearing level, but you can go pre-hearing, you can have mediations, you can have DESE, facilitated team meetings. So there's a lot of steps that could happen before you get to that hearing, which is just a mess. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of stress, and parents and kids and staff, they don't need that.
Yeah. Another question is, I've been reading and seeing that you are our McKinney-Vento coordinator and our foster care point of contact, that the state requires be identified. How much of your time is spent in those areas, and do you get support from the state or from any other sources to meet those requirements? Because it seems like the state sets out that you hold those titles. Do they also give you support or guidelines for accomplishing those?
They do not provide me additional funding for the titles that they want me to carry. What they have provided, there was a grant, and it was interesting. They said you can apply for this grant if we are going to offer you more than $5,000. They offer us $3,500. So what they say is, if we're not offering $5,000 in the grant, you have to now buddy up with someone else. So we're buddied up with Harvard, and so we have about $3,500 to spend for children considered homeless in that particular area. And that could go towards tutoring, transportation, whatever is needed to make sure the child is getting what he or she needs. And, maybe some folks don't think we have anybody in Maynard considered homeless. We do.
Yeah.
And as far as foster care, we have our counselors are outstanding, and they do a tremendous amount of work without having it in the forefront, because they're doing a lot of very private, personal stuff to support families. We have to do a particular training. I went to a training in Springfield. This was maybe 3 weeks ago, just to hear the latest and greatest on homeless and foster care, and what are the trends And so I can contact Sarah Slaughterback. She's the big mucky muck for all homeless and foster. But it's rare that we would say, sorry, we don't consider you foster, consider you homeless is probably the biggest question. And I've had that, I think it was like a week ago, I had someone say, well, do we consider this person homeless? I said, we err on the side of the family. Yes, they've lost their housing. They might be living with family, but okay, that's not where they really wanted to go. And as far as, in the old days, they might have access to, they still have access, free lunch. Well, that was been offered for everybody. So in transportation we had a family who lost their place in Maynard, ended up, I think, in another town. And you have a right to stay in your school of origin. So the big thing was, okay, so Rhonda would try to find transportation to go and grab them from where they are outside of Maynard to make sure they continue with us here. And then we need to educate, those teachers on this is what's going on. I think we had one challenging case where the student didn't have a lot of their documentation.
Yeah.
Well, okay, we have in our registration packet that, that's not, you can register them, get them in the school.
Yeah.
We'll take care of that other stuff. And same thing for military connected families, even though I don't believe we have any officially designated, but that's very similar too. Get them into the school as quickly as possible. We'll track down the documentation another time. And I believe our schools have been very welcoming in those rare cases that they pop up. So that's part of the role.
Yeah, I was mostly wondering about the legal side. Like, I know the rules, the laws changed for the foster children about how the decision is made about which school they stay in.
Yep.
And the hearings and all of that stuff.
And those are pretty uneventful. I mean, it's one of those, say DCF gets together with you, you talk about what's in the best interest. It's a best interest determination meeting, right? So a bid.
Yeah.
And if you and the DCF disagree, well, DCF takes precedence. So it's like, well, what is best? And generally you all agree on what's best. Now it's a matter of, can we find the transportation for the child? And as far as who pays for it, normally it's 50-50, but I'm like, that's we can work that out. Let's just get the kid where he or she or they need to go. But we've had a few cases over the years.
Thank you. My last question is just, is there a way that you can help with recruiting parents for CPAC? And granted, I totally understand that CPAC is a unique situation where it's self-selecting for parents that have the least amount of free time. But I know that the membership is low and that it's the same, is there a way to work on that, that we could help you or you could help them? Or do you have ideas about maybe reaching out to particularly the younger parents? Because then once they get involved, they could stay involved for a while.
I could meet with Natasha and the CPAC and go over some different thoughts. That's fine. I think our next collaboration meeting is in January, but if there's a CPAC meeting before that and we talk about how best to go about, recruiting some folks, there are some different ways that, I was fortunate enough to have started 2 CPACs. One was disbanded by a previous director because everybody was fighting. The director and CPAC were all fighting. And so they disbanded it and the state allowed it as long as you were providing certain PD. I came in, I'm like, are you kidding me? You got close to 500 kids on IEPs. Where's the CPAC? And what really helped is we had a kind of like a resource night. And we brought all the area agencies that could provide services to families. And so the families all came in to see who else was out there for their kid. And while they were there, oh, by the way, we have this CPAC. And that's how we got people. They were all cranked up from seeing. And so we started one that way. Like a resource fair. It takes a lot of work to plan it, a lot of work, but that resulted in quite a few people wanting to get involved. So that's one way.
Okay, thank you. Natasha?
I can let, I think, Mara, did you have a question or you? I got disconnected for a period of time, so I don't know what happened when I was gone. Sorry.
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Jeff, I just wanted to circle back because I didn't get to finish earlier, but on the co-taught class, I know that in CPAC, it has come up before. And I know that one of the challenges that has happened, I think, with regards that the oftentimes, and this may, I don't know if this was necessarily COVID specific, but the special educator who would be in the classroom also carried a caseload of their own. And that required, so, you know, when you have to provide services and you're getting pulled out, like you were talking about, the demands of doing those services, then it does create that void of the kids who were in that classroom not having that support to meet that. So I understand that is a tricky balance and how to achieve that and to make it work successfully while also being compliant with all the support that you need to for that. But I remember that was one of the areas that became I guess an area of concern, was the balance with caseloads to the service provider and, you know, their time in able to be in the classroom supporting the in-class instruction. So I don't know if that was feedback that you had similarly heard recently through your survey.
It is.
All right. Is there anything you wanted to elaborate on that?
I think if you speak with the gen ed teachers and special ed teachers, they can clarify further. I will give you this scenario to think of. Say there's 12 students in a grade with special
Mhm.
needs. Okay. And say we have a co-taught class. How many kids should be in there of those 12?
If you have a 12, I'm sorry, what was the first
We have
part?
12 students with IEPs.
Yeah.
How many should be in that co-taught class?
I know that when the presentation was given to us before, there was a ratio that was provided to us about how many kids in the classroom would be on IEPs, and then the profile of children, you know, so that there were not heavy, there was some maybe more language based, you know, classroom. So there was some, it sounded like operationally there had been discussions to address some of that. Now, in execution, I can't say if that happened with Fidelity, but I know it had been a talking point. You know, my personal feedback is not going to be the same on, you know, what I think is a teacher's perspective would be, because I'm not a teacher. I think you should have the number of supports or teachers in there that you support the kids that you're required to. So if there's an IEP that has, you know, one-on-one, you know, how does that work, right? Exactly. You have to look at the IEPs to see how do you make up the class the best. If there's a kid who needs, you know, one-on-one instruction for language, you know, yeah, it's a very dicey recipe to follow. And I understand the delicate nature that you know, it puts a lot of pressure on accountability. And I could see where if someone's out sick, you know, how does that work? And there's a lot of shifting there. I like the idea, and I think the higher theme to that is inclusion, right? Is how do we approach a situation where the co-taught, the intent was that we were doing push-in services like small groups. And so how can we maybe achieve the desired outcome in a similar way? And maybe that is the better conversation to have, right? Is that we want to have the least restrictive for students, so they're not needing to get all those pullouts. Is there a way that we could to do that in a path forward?
I think the teachers who took the survey, so I think I had almost 100% participation in the survey. I think, you know, inviting them to talk about co-teaching and leaving a good amount of time, I think you'll hear everything you want to hear. Or I should say everything, I should say you'll have answers to all your questions. It may not be what you want to hear, but I think you'll get answers to all your questions.
I think it's, I just want to hear information and the truth, right? I think the last information brought to the school committee was probably 2019. And the teachers that came and spoke very highly of the program. So
yeah, that may have been the sheet I have here, is when that was presented with certain data points. From one point was from math, one point was from DRAs, and the different ratios that they had. That could be why I thought it was 18, 19.
yeah,
But yeah, pick out, you know, Hillary, speak with Brian on what would be a good date, and we'll invite the staff.
and then I guess the other part too would be getting to the filings, whatever the I know that there's a lot of parents who really hate to go down that path. You know, no one wants to be a parent who files a complaint against their school district. You know, and we're a small school district. I think the outcome is that how do we reconcile issues before it gets to that. And so I hope those lower numbers would be a reflection of maybe we're achieving that in some level.
Well, and I'll give you an example. We have some parents who have not signed IEPs for quite some time. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, one way I could approach it is say, you know what, we have to send it anyways to the state, and the state comes back, and here are different ways to address the issue. The other option is, okay, I'll just ask for a hearing, pre-hearing. Well, you know what? That just blew up the relationship with the parent, even though you're trying to get them. And even if you ask for meetings, some just get stuck and they don't want to sign for whatever reason. So the question is, how do I approach that? Well, you know what? I'd rather not use up all my money in the legal stuff to go down that path. It's more of, okay, let's swing back around, ask them again, how are things going? Is there a reason why you're uncomfortable signing? Let's have a meeting. So that is part of the approach that my team chairs will take on. And they'll come to me and say, what do you want to do with this? Because we know it's not compliant. We know that the state's going to come in their self-assessment and say, wait a minute, you do not have a signature here. But then I have to be able to argue back, well, yes, we don't. But here are all the steps we've tried to do to have the parent be part of the process. So, you know, it's just a slightly different approach than perhaps in the past. You know, I wasn't here in the past. You know, I can only go by where we're at now. I like to think that because we do not have those complaints going in, that we're doing things right. You know what? Sometimes we do trip up. Okay, and sometimes there is a misunderstanding of something. You know, with 242 kids on IEPs and all the complexity of that. Once again, I'll mention you get on an IEP because you haven't been successful in general ed. So you already have parents kind of on edge, like, wait a minute, my child wasn't successful where they were supposed to be. So we're very sensitive to that as well. And as we increase the skill level of our gen ed teachers, well, then you know what? We are going to see probably less kids being referred and more kids being successful. I think the literacy work being done at Green Meadow should certainly address that. I think the math work that Charles, you know, that Chuck is doing with his team as well. I think we're on a good path. I mean, COVID really messed things up. We have second graders that just who are showing some signs of not having basic skills that we always assumed second graders would have because they weren't here for K&1. So that's another piece to it.
I will just take this moment real quick to say that the scenario that you just described,
Sure, which one?
about a parent.
Yeah,
in
that's just an
IEP.
example of different ways we could approach things.
Yeah, I think that's something that we're going to have an offline conversation about. I yield the floor back, Hillary.
Real quick, if I could, because I know we've taken more on this, but regarding the survey, Jeff, do you think, is it okay for us to see that survey? That you I mean, to send it to us? I'd like to actually see it unless there's some.
Absolutely. I'll send you the survey and I can send you a copy of the results too.
That would be fantastic.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hang on.
Whenever, yeah, that would be great at some point. Thank you.
Hang on, let me write that down.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that's,
Mary,
I'm good. Hey, send it to everybody. I'm sure everybody would want to see it.
Yeah,
survey and results.
Thank you.
thank you. And thank you for the presentation and answering our questions. The next item on our agenda is the public comment and school committee meetings policy. It looks like everybody's read the draft that's in the folder. This is the one that we went over maybe 2 months ago. That was sent to the attorney and she made edits. I know I see Elizabeth and I think I saw someone else has had maybe just Elizabeth. Has everybody read this and do people have thoughts on the edits from the attorney? I know that there was some disagreement about the sign-up instructions and the mechanism for sign-ups at our last meeting. Brian was reaching out to the attorney for suggestions about what she's found. She's the attorney for a lot of school committees. And so what they found has been helpful in other towns and works to allow folks to comment and not restrict commenting, but also allow the business meeting to continue and allow meeting minutes and all of that. You haven't heard back from her yet, right?
Correct. This is the most updated
Okay.
policy, and this is, and we want a solid policy given the recent news this week, which
Yeah.
I'm sure, okay.
Yeah. I think, it's important that we are consistent with whatever recommendations the attorney suggests, particularly given that she's been involved in these other schools that are really struggling. We don't want to be the next ones on the news.
Hillary,
yeah.
I need to leave for a minute.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So I don't know, are we good with the edits from the attorney and moving forward with this policy with understanding that we need to finalize sign up instructions in the near future? If our goal is to have an in-person meeting, I mean, the goal of this policy in general was to work for both in-person and remote meetings. I think that but our move to in-person meetings is a good opportunity to make this change. And so I think that we have incentive and a desire to have this approved for when we have an in-person meeting, potentially our next meeting. I think that if we got comments from the attorney and suggestions for the sign up, we could email it around, and folks could maybe send them tomorrow. And then when we meet as the policy subcommittee, finalize them and then work on those, even if those are lagging behind a little bit. But in order to get this moving as much as we can prior to the in-person meeting, specifically Mary and Elizabeth, I know we talked about it at the subcommittee meeting. What are people's thoughts on this not being totally complete and on Sarah's edits?
I'm fine with it.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm fine with it. Yeah, knowing that the attorney put her comments in. Yeah.
I just know she has a couple questions that are not answered. So down near the number 3, she has a question that was not answered. And
yeah,
as a comment, and then there was another number 9.
Number 9. Yeah. So for number 3, I figure the answer is yes. Like it is, we're not going to say you can't submit. Like the point of the 15-minute limit is to not let our meeting be taken over by public comments.
Right.
I don't know that we would have any need to limit written comments that are submitted after the fact. And then for number 9, I guess what are people's thoughts on that? Because I'm fine either way. If she's saying it's already been covered and or that we don't need it because it's a sort of a given, I'm okay with not having it there. I also don't think that just because something's a given means we shouldn't have it there if it's helpful to have it there. Part of when we were working on this policy, the mask recommended policy had this split up into several documents. Mm-hmm. And I tried to combine them so that all of our public comment guidelines would be in one document, so that if there are concerns at a meeting or concerns by someone wanting to speak, we can really easily provide the copy of the policy. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know that it could be beneficial to have that there, since then that's available to provide, but I'm open either way.
Mm-hmm. I can see the point of it. I think as long as I think it's just kind of a nice reminder that is an option in this situation. So as a person in a community who's not a lawyer, I don't read it to mean that I can't do that other places.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I guess she is sort of suggesting that we not have it there. So
yeah,
I'm not sure.
Yeah, so she is kind of suggesting it, but it's not as strongly as other places where she actually deleted. So,
Mary and Mara, what are your thoughts on that line?
I am okay with keeping it in because it just reiterates again. So it's just more reinforcement and the fact that she wasn't adamant about it.
Yeah.
I don't
I
have.
feel like we might be.
I'm fine either way. So,
I was thinking that it could be good to give people the heads up that that's something we could do.
yeah, that's
So that if somebody does call point of order, the member of the audience that's commenting doesn't think that that's grounds for a problem.
mhm.
Brian's nodding.
Yeah, I think it's fine. It's like rules. It's just like a reminder of the
Yeah.
rules, a way to make it, you know, quote unquote safe space. You know how that's
Yeah.
established. So that makes sense.
Brian?
I didn't actually mean to. I agree with that. I think it's a nice reminder. So when parents see that, if they do read that, then they know that why you're saying that isn't a personal affront to them. That's just
Right.
part of our policy.
Yeah.
That's all.
One other thing is, I had thought I really like the idea of having the whole all the guidelines in one document. If Sarah's suggestions for the example policies had sign up instructions as multi-bulleted numbered instructions. If her suggestions for the sign up were fairly brief, I thought it could be nice to stick them in the same document as opposed to having an addendum for the instructions, just so that everything's there. So if we have any sort of issue, we have one document to provide. Voting to approve this now would mean, if we wanted to do that, after the fact, editing the same document. But we don't have to do that. That's just an option or a thought.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Natasha, I don't want to put you on the spot, just joining.
Sorry.
We've just been talking about the public comment policy, and basically accepting all of Sarah's suggestions, with the exception of the one that's number 9, where she didn't cross it out. She just said she didn't know that it was needed and maybe we don't want it, and sort of talking about the reasons it might be good to keep that one there. And then also whether or not we're comfortable voting to approve this, given that we don't have the sign up instructions yet. And that we would, when we receive the suggestion, the suggested wording for sign or a suggested method for sign up from Sarah, emailing it around to everybody. And then if people have comments and suggestions, emailing them tomorrow before our next policy subcommittee meeting, and trying to tack that on as quickly as possible, but getting this policy approved so that if we're having in-person meetings if our next meeting is in person, we would have this in place.
I think that sounds right. I'm just trying to pull up my computer. I had wrote down what number 9, what you were saying. Sorry.
So the line that was on, I had gotten this from the mask policies, and it said, a committee member is encouraged to call a point of order should a member believe the public meeting rules are not being followed. And her suggestion is that this is always the case and doesn't seem appropriate for the public comment section because it would imply it's not true outside of public comment. I was thinking that the benefit of keeping it there is so that if we had an occasion where somebody did call point of order and we addressed it, that it wouldn't be a surprise to the audience member or the commenter that this is something that could happen. And it also, I think, reminds the school committee that we have the right to say that, where we may, a year from now, not remember that the attorney said that it's actually an okay thing to do and feel anxious about doing that.
Maybe a good way to approach it might be to say as allowable under MGL, so it doesn't seem like it's introducing a new thing by the policy. It's just reinforcing, to Sarah's point, what is there, I don't know if that makes sense. If that's what she's trying to say, is that she's trying to say it's assumed, but I think what you're trying to say is the public doesn't have awareness to that it's assumed. So if we can maybe just say, and this assumes that the school committee is, allowed to whatever language it is, but it just doesn't introduce it as new. I don't know. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah. I like that. I don't know that we could, I think if we're citing MGL, we probably want to have the actual citation, and I don't know that off the top of my head to add it right now. I'm sure
I
she
can-
could tell us, and
Yeah, maybe I could just
and
think
we
of
could
some
run it
wording
by
that she
her.
has. If she's saying whatever she suggested in it, just maybe even taking some of her wording and just, but yeah, I'm fine with keeping it. If that's the majority. If as long as it doesn't create any additional risk, if it's worded in a way that she's comfortable with.
Brian, can we just run that sentence by her and make sure if we keep it, she's comfortable with the wording, and ask about citing, as consistent with MGL.
I think
Number
Colleen,
nine.
Yeah, number
Yeah.
Oh, number 9. Yep.
Colleen has
Sorry,
a,
Mary.
Colleen has her hand up. She might have a thought.
I wonder if you say as allowable under Robert's rules, since that's a Robert's rules thing.
But that doesn't tell us, that doesn't give us the legal right to do it. Like Robert's rules aren't a legal thing.
But isn't that stated in your bylaws that you follow Robert's rules?
I know, but like say Robert's rules told us that we could do something and MGL told us we couldn't, we wouldn't be able to do it just because we say we would.
It sounded like Sarah was saying we were entitled to that under some legal measure, right? And I think Robert's rules is more protocol. It's like it's consistently followed, but I don't know if it's grounded in law necessarily. So maybe getting clarification on that from Sarah.
Yeah. Brian?
All right. I will email her tomorrow and have, as soon as she responds, I'll fill you in on number 9 and
Okay.
a comment related to MGL if she feels that's appropriate.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So do we have is there a possibility of approving this without having that information, or do we need to wait now?
I would like to, we can always amend it, to be honest. I mean, it sounds like it's one sentence that we can add. It not substantive. I think maybe that will impact the next meeting, but I would really like to move it forward if we can.
Okay.
The
I'm
other
comfortable
thing,
with that the way
you-
it is. Sorry.
Wait, she missed the part about we might also add the sign up instructions to it.
And we
Yeah.
can do that after,
Sorry,
right?
I think she might have missed
Yeah.
that.
So I was thinking that I've seen other towns put the sign up instructions as a different document, and I thought it could be helpful to have them included here too. So if we have an issue, we could provide it all as everything related to public comments as one document. And so I was thinking that, we would basically amend this policy.
To add E, would it be like evidence or whatever, like the sample? I know we did that with the
Instead
agenda,
of
like,
doing that, if
a
it was short, we could maybe stick it right in here. Like if her suggestion is one sentence, instead of having another document that we have to remember to provide, we could just edit this
Yeah.
policy again in January and stick it in there. So I think it's worthwhile using it as is now, and knowing that we are pretty likely to revise it again in January
Mhm.
in minor ways.
I mean, and to be honest, if there's something that, it's easy enough, there's some things that are not, changeable, and there's some things that are. So I think that'd be great to bring us a little bit closer to where we want to be.
A motion.
You want to make it, Natasha?
Yeah, if you could.
You want me to? Okay. I vote that that the school committee approves policy BEDH, which is a combination of the former BEDH and BEDHE.
A second.
Discussion. Okay, roll call. Mara,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes,
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Natasha,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Great. I feel really positive that we got that accomplished.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you guys for working on it.
Yeah, thank you guys. For chairs report, I don't have much, and I'll get it organized for next time. Colleen?
We did post a revised agenda. We have policy DN, disposable school property, that needs to be
Oh, sorry.
approved.
Okay. Sorry, I had things open and I don't have that one. Okay. Yep. Okay. So this one we had covered a while ago. And I don't remember, were there any concerns when we covered it last time? I think there was we had one question maybe.
It was,
Brian?
right.
Right?
Oh,
Wasn't it
sorry.
laptops?
I was just, there's a question around technology. So we ran it through Adam, our technology director, who added some language so it includes technology. I don't have it open on my screen. I think it's on the second page. So that's been addressed.
And I did have a question about requiring if there was any town action. Because I know at the town, we vote on disposal of things, but was there like a dollar threshold or something that might be? I didn't know if that was, you know what I'm talking about, Mary? Like we have like the DPW, like whatever, get rid of this and they sell it, or I didn't know if there was like some other MGL or something that there's a dollar limit that would trigger that versus.
So that first sentence says the $10,000.
I didn't know if that was the threshold. I think that's what I was wondering. I don't know why some things would go at the town and some things wouldn't. Is I guess at 30B, is that maybe that's the reference for it, huh? That MGL, the 30B, because that's a procurement.
Yeah, it says the Uniform Procurement Act of the General Laws of Massachusetts.
Okay. This is
I'm
from
not seeing in here the technology piece.
I'm not either.
No, I'm not either. I thought it might have been changed with instructional materials under that, because that was highlighted.
I feel like a month or so ago, I saw a version of this policy that had a line added specifically mentioning students being able to buy or keep their devices that they had been using.
Yeah.
I'm thinking this maybe isn't the most up-to-date version.
Yeah, I agree with you. There was a piece in there about students being able to buy. Yeah, this isn't the most updated.
Brian?
I thought that I can't open it, but if I would just table that, we'll go back. We'll make sure for the next meeting we have the most updated one uploaded.
Great.
I saw
Okay.
it, must have been in a different folder. My apologies.
Yeah, I have seen it.
Right, I looked at it, but
Yeah.
we'll move it into the folder next time. Table it, please.
Thank you.
Is there a time sensitivity to that, Brian, that needed to bring it forward? Are we something?
They have things that need to be disposed
We have
of.
things,
but-
we have old textbooks that we are trying to get rid of, but 2 weeks is not gonna matter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Subcommittee reports and members' comments, Mary?
Oh, it's getting late, so nothing earth shattering.
Natasha?
We talked about budget, and the only thing from personnel just to add is that, continue to talk about secretarial, that's in executive session, and also the MOA with that we're getting updates. Brian's providing updates about the MOA with the town, and because that will be up for renewal. And so there's some ongoing conversations that he's engaging with Justin and Mike to make sure that some language that, feedback we had. So if there's anybody who has looked at the MOA and is other things, I haven't heard, but please feel free to share. Some of the things that Mauro and I have discussed was just getting there was feedback from the fields committees about aeration of the field at one point, and that was required, and it wasn't explicitly outlined in the MOA as part of the tasks of maintaining fields. And so Brian is working to understand that and see if there's a way that, I think there's obviously a budget concern, so to be cognizant of, and it sounded like some of that was already happening possibly. So it just is, how do we codify that in a way that is happening so we understand what is not happening. And then I think the other part was related to inspection of structures that are under the care of the town. And, you know, how can we outline responsible parties for making sure like who triggers that requirement for the inspection. And I think the bleacher obviously comes as the most recent one that we're learning from, is that how do we, you know, again, just codify language. There's no ambiguity on who should be engaging with the building inspector or whatever to address those things that we understand are being cared for by another party. So that's really it. And then for
Wait, can I ask
CPAC,
a question about that?
yeah.
So I know that Justin had asked for substantially more money for the field maintenance this year, and I'm assuming he got it. If he's getting additional money from the town for maintenance, is what he provides for the maintenance going to increase as well?
So
Like, is
last
his side
year,
of the-
I think where that's coming from is because there was money for Fowler that had
Yeah.
been collected, and it ran out basically last year, I
Yeah.
think. And so there was no, and to maintain all the investment that was put into for the Maynard youth soccer, what they had done. So I think that, you know, it still needs to be maintained. And so that's just the responsibility of the town now to make sure that they are doing what they need to maintain. So I think he's allocating what he needs to do that. Oh, and I don't know if there's, you know, anything else, but that's what I would probably read that as. I haven't heard it. I could totally be making assumptions that are not true, but I don't know, Mary, I know you've been part of some of those conversations, and that would make sense to me. I don't know.
I'm mostly wondering if that will be reflected in the MOA. Like if he's receiving money to be doing a task for the schools, ideally that would be reflected in what he's signing and agreeing to.
Well, so that a contract, it does say if either party is not fulfilling their, like, you know, you meet, I mean, I think the onus would be on us to bring the select board into a conversation if we feel like, you know, as a signator to the agreement that they're not, you know, holding up to, you know, whatever, because they're responsible for, you know, that piece. So
No,
if they're
I think
agreeing,
I'm not saying he's not fulfilling his side at all. I'm saying moving forward, if he's going to be getting more money to do more work, then have the additional work in the agreement. I'm not saying anything about like what's previously been done. Like I don't want that to get back
I
to
don't know if
anybody.
he's, no. I don't know if he's going to be doing more work. I think he's getting funding from the operating budget to do that, where in the past there was money dedicated from a fund, like for the fields that was raised outside of the operating budget, that it kind of dwindled down. So I think the work might still be, the level of effort of putting into will be retained. He's able to now fund it through the operating budget.
Okay.
That's maybe, I don't know if that makes sense, Mary, right?
Yep, that's my understanding too. They had done a lot of fundraising for Fowler and the field, and I think it was mid-year that they were running out. So to your point, he's just finding a different financial source to continue to take care of it.
Okay.
Anything else on that? No. Okay. And then the only other thing is CPAC. So there was a member of CPAC who needed to step down, Nancy McNeil, and so she for health reasons she had to resign. So that is one of the areas right now. It's a very slim picking group, and I know we have some people who have expressed interest. So I am excited to hopefully we can get re-energized. The basic rights is something that I met with a couple of the members, only a couple left. But that I will be taking that on, because that was something that we had hoped Nancy would be able to do. So I'll be taking on that, and I'll be connecting with Jeff where needed to get that done. So, and then we also did talk about a little bit, because we wanted to have a winter social, but given the, you know, it's eating and illnesses that are going around and all that, it just didn't feel like, you know, and a lot of that population, you know, could have health concerns. It didn't feel like the right the right event. So I think, looking to a spring event, again, maybe that could be more outdoors, maybe that could be advertised for, more than just, special ed students, but, have it as inclusive, where we have maybe some sensory, areas that can be supportive. I think that is the approach that the CPAC will be exploring. And then also some speakers. We did have some speakers that we are connecting with as well. So more to come.
Elizabeth?
No, it's like Mary, nothing earth shattering.
Maro?
Same here.
Okay. Let me see, make sure I get this right. Sorry, I lost my list of what was on our which warrants and minutes we had.
Hillary, if you want to know the
so-
minutes. Oh,
The minutes are 9:22 and 9:08.
Okay. Sorry, it's not opening. So for 9:22, are we good with that, with the edits that are on there? Okay. And 9:08. Same, everything seems like, no content really. They're all like grammatical. So are we good with the 9:08 minutes too?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So without objection, I move to approve the minutes from 9:22, 2022 and 9:08, 2022.
With edits.
Okay. With edits, sorry. And then Colleen, can you give me the warrants too?
yes, they
27 and
were
28.
20, number 30 and 31. And then if, I don't know if anyone had a chance, but today was also number 32.
I can't vote on 30.
30. Okay. So
And I
without
didn't have a
objection,
chance to look at the one from today yet.
okay. So without objection, I move to approve warrant 23-031. And then roll call vote to approve 23-030.
Need a
Mary-
motion?
Sorry, what?
Motion.
Need a-
Motion. Oh, motion to approve 23-030.
A second.
Okay. Discussion? Okay. Mary?
Yes.
Natasha?
Yes.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
And Maro?
I'm abstaining.
Yeah, and then I'm a yes. So now we'll go to executive session under MGL Chapter 30A 21A3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Secretarial Union, AFSCME Local 1703, State Council Number 93, and 21A2 to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, superintendent, since an open meeting will have a detrimental effect on the bargaining of the public body and the chair so declares. The school committee will not reconvene in open session. We vote now, right?
Yes. Roll call open. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mary,
Yes.
Maro,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Natasha.
Yes.
Okay.
And you're a yes?
And yes, I'm a yes. Sorry.